This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And the Adepticon mob in the third chair. With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming to the speed of an aging podcaster, given 5 minutes to go from Gate 820 in Baltimore, Washington to Gate 9 or miss his favorite con. Today's edition is brought to you by the Adepticon Minis Mob, who are sharing their last night in sunny Chicago with us on this fine, soft evening. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ, What Save versus Spending Wakelin, and the very special guest, the long-distance runners of lounging, the endurance athletes of the Minis table, the Adepticon 2018 Minis Mob! Let's begin! Issue number 1. Skirmish is a term often used to delineate war games with a small model count, small table footprint, or more tactical depth that can be provided in a larger model count game. Adepticon is perhaps unique in all the world of gaming conventions for the sheer number of skirmish games on offer. You can swing a shrieking mountain cat companion animal without hitting... You cannot swing a shrieking mountain cat companion animal without hitting yet another example of the genre, and that's great. On a scale of 1 through 10, with 1 being post-apocalyptic window washing and 10 being superheroes versus pirate zombie ninjas on the high seas, how would you rate the average board gamer's interest in getting mixed up in one of these wacky games? Renegade Russ.
8.5.
Malefic Mini Mob.
20 millimeter. 9 others. 9 others.
The answer is 2.5. Or an angry emoji caught with a data bolt in mid-jump from one processing stack to another.
I played that game.
What are the chances any of you chose that? Nothing, and I like it when you're wrong and I'm right. Russ will choose you for your prize later. You know?
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay, issue number 2. There are many valid reasons for coming to Chicago. There's the weather. There's the scenic vistas. There's the sheer entertainment value of watching the drivers. But one of the most enduring motives for making the journey is the food. Question. What is the one must-make culinary stop when sojourning in the Windy City? Reggae Russ.
Pan pizza.
Mall Zone Mini Jump Mob.
Portillo's.
Wrong! It's Buffalo Wild Wings! Because there's no way anyone in this group would have said that, and again, I don't want to ruin my record. Issue number 3. At Adepticon, there are many amazing sights to see. The Golden Brush entries are some of the most incredible examples of miniature painting in the world. Some of the cosplay you'll see here, from giant demonesses to a whole panoply of Warhammer 40,000 characters, are truly stunning. And of course, the impression of a huge, well-painted army, whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, or historical, cannot be denied. Question. One of the most amazing sights at Adepticon, however, is undoubtedly the competitive displays created for the Warhammer 40,000 team tournament. What was my favorite display from Adepticon 2018? Renegade Guard Russ.
The manufacturing pipe.
Adeptus Mechanicus Mini Mob.
Russ getting out of the shower.
Oh.
Wrong and disturbing. That's no prizes. The assault on the Emperor's Palace was great. Oh, did you check my Twitter feed for my answer, Ross? Oh, no points for cheating. Issue number 4. There are few things more sad than a convention venue the day after the con. Everything's been packed away, all the people are gone, and the mundane, threadbare decor and empty tableless and chairless halls stretch on for miles and miles of sad, forlorn void. It is a fine calculation to make between the fear of missing out and exposure to the soul-chilling emptiness that is post-con world. Question. If the final event of a convention ends at midnight on a Sunday, what is the ideal time to bow out and make your goodbyes? Retiring Russ.
2 a.m.
Migratory Mini Mob.
3 a.m.
Wrong! The D6G board gaming night goes all night long. The 2 old farts in the front of the room have to go to bed by about 12:30 though, so you never know. That's it for now. Thanks for listening and good night. Yay!
This episode of the D6 generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G. Hello! Hey, and welcome to episode 234, Craig.
234. And look, we're all alone in this big empty room.
We are. It's like everybody just left and flew to another place or something.
It's as sad and empty as the Schaumburg Renaissance Convention Center the day after the Adepticon ends.
So we're sadly sitting here in an empty room recording episode 234 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakeland.
I am Craig Gallant, and there's no one in the third chair.
No, actually, no. The third chair is chock full, except for achievements.
It is. That is true. That is
the Adepticon mob. So, yeah, as you heard in Rapid Fire, the mob was vocal and participatory, right, Craig?
Oh, participatory. That was very good, Russ.
Like
Excellent diction.
And we're trying something brand new this episode. So in addition to, Rapid Fire, and of course, we'll jump into achievements here in a minute, and Craig and I will share with you all the excitement that was Adepticon via achievements. But also, whilst we were at Adepticon, Craig.
Yes.
Whilst we were there, we decided to try a brand new game review format.
Russ had a vision.
Well, I just felt like, everybody reviews a game after they've played it.
Yeah.
And there's some debate about how many times you should play a game before you review it, as a responsible game reviewer. And some people I know have shared their thoughts on a game before they played it. Maybe they've read the rules or seen a preview on Kickstarter and talk about how it appeals to them or gets them excited, right?
Yeah.
But we decided, wouldn't it be cool to review a game as you played it?
Interesting.
Now, it's not to be confused with recording a gaming session. That's not what this is. This isn't just open mic night to hear all the random comments as people play a 2-hour-long game. No, that
would be a long walk.
Live streaming a game has its place, but that's not what this is. No. What this is an interesting, hopefully engaging, possibly format to get our thoughts as we play a game at various moments throughout the game, and then we'll have our final thoughts. What the heck am I talking about? There's only one way to find out, and that would be to listen to the rest of the show.
Right? That's right.
But before we get to all that, Craig, we did meet in Dunkin' Donuts before Adepticon.
We did indeed.
Do you remember who we talked to at Dunkin' Donuts?
We met Ross Watson. He's been going to Dunkin' Donuts a lot lately.
He has.
Wanted to talk about Black Panther. And
we did.
Really wanted to talk about 40K fluff with him because that's like his wheelhouse. But
bailiwick, as it were.
Bailiwick, indeed. And he negotiated with us so that he could do both.
He did. And it's great because it was funny, actually, as some astute listeners will know, we've started experimenting with new technology that allows patrons to listen to the show live whilst it is recorded. Indeed. I'm trying all kinds of new words today, Craig. We'll see how they work out.
It's so far so good.
And what that allows you to do is kind of listen in. Now, what happens is we tweet out, hey, in a few days, we're going to be recording live. And so we mentioned, hey, in a few days, we're going to be recording live and we'll be talking about Black Panther. Now, many listeners were concerned because they weren't able to join us live. Mm-hmm. And they said, we saw you were talking about Black Panther. Is that you got to be there live only or you miss out? And no, everything we do in those live ones, all those, that's listening live while we record the show, and those segments become either a lost chapter or a part of the main show. The only thing you're missing by not listening live is the little bit of strange banter that occurs between the end of one segment and the start of the next. So a little bit of behind the scenes, behind the curtains. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you miss a little of that, but otherwise, you're not missing anything. So don't worry. Here's Black Panther. But if you want to listen to Black Panther, you do have to be a patron. And Craig, how do people go about doing that?
Well, the best way to become a patron and sponsor the show and keep it going would be to go to the d6generation.com and click on the Patreon button in the right-hand column, and it will take you directly to the D6 Generation Patreon page. It will explain the whole thing, and basically what you're doing is you're putting a little change into the tip jar every episode to help keep the lights on and keep the hosting and keep the show going.
Exactly right. So there you have it. That's how fine patrons can join the show and promote it and get to listen to all these great things. Fine patrons like Shay Wallace, for example, who just joined in the room. Well, welcome, Shay.
Look at that.
For So anyway, so that's it. That's how you get involved, get into the show, listen to those crazy lost chapters, maybe even jump in and listen to us record live, text us, comment to us, let us know what you're thinking as we record these achievements, asking any kinds of questions. In any case, Craig.
Yes.
What's the time now for?
It's time now for Achievements in Gaming.
Indeed it is. And Achievements in Gaming, of course, brought to us by all our fine friends over at Patreon, including just as Shay, who's really impressed that we just folded him right in here to the show. Shay, we are consummate professionals.
We are.
That's how this
we
goes.
can deal with everything. There's a certain level of improv show, really. We say that we've had a Skype issue tonight. We were going to record this, just Russ and I, but we have this new technology and Skype completely failed us. So we jumped on at the last second onto the Patreon recording green room situation. And then we just tweeted out, hey, there's no warning whatsoever. And look at this. Shay just jumped on with no warning at all.
So thank you, Shay, for being out there for us. It really makes us feel warm and fuzzy. So on to what we've been playing lately. This should be exciting because Craig and I just got back from Adepticon, chock filled of exciting gaming
convention ever.
It's still, Craig, before we get into the games we actually played, we should probably just talk a moment about the 2018 Adepticon experience. Now, we go into Adepticon every year with a certain level of expectation. We've been going for many years now. Interestingly, Gen Con, I never went to Gen Con. It was a lifelong dream for me to go to Gen Con. I never went to Gen Con until after the show existed. It was because of the show that I was finally able to go. But Adepticon, I went to prior to the show existing because I was that passionate about miniature gaming, that passionate about Adepticon. The folks who run it, I have a long-term relationship. Back when I ran DAC, I got to know a lot of the guys out there. So it's really it's like getting together with old friends every year in many ways. Craig, has that diminished at all, or is it still just as different?
I never went. I never got to go until the show. So the show has allowed us to do so much, including go to these cool conventions. And I went actually the very first year we did it. Rafe and I went out and were part of the first Adepticon that there was a D6 generation. And it was awesome then, and it is awesome now. I must say, everything I love about it is only getting better every year, including the atmosphere is great. Everybody is excited about everybody else's games. It doesn't matter whether you're playing War Machine or Warhammer 40,000. There doesn't seem to be any of that internet tension that you can sometimes see or that people pretend is there because they like drama or whatever.
Right.
You wander around. You've got War Machine guys wandering through the 40K rooms because they're just cool to look at. You've got Infinity guys wandering through the Saga room because it's really cool to look at. And it's literally like a time machine because every ballroom you walk into is a different time period or a different game system. There's fantasy, there's sci-fi, there's historical. It's all over the place. And it's just, there's an energy and an excitement. And at the same time, Russ, it's an intimacy that you don't get at these big conventions that Adepticon somehow, even though they had nearly 5,000 people there this year, they still managed to make it this intimate feeling because it's such a big place, I think. I think it's right. Schaumburg is this huge, really high-end hotel, so there's also that cool experience as well. There's a giant fire pit room with a ginormous chandelier over the fire pit. There's just everything about it is just awesome.
It is, and I think they still are very focused on what makes Adepticon great, which is the amazing painting contests, the amazing. One thing about Adepticon that has never changed despite how much they've grown, and I think this is probably one of the most impressive things as a miniature gamer, for me personally, is the amazing amount of terrain for every game being played there. So you go into these rooms with these tournaments of like 70, 80, 100 tables set up, right? And every single table has top-notch terrain that you would be proud to have in your downstairs, that you would covet to have in your downstairs. And to go into these rooms and see the Infinity tables and the Saga tables, and even this year, Adepticon's become so prominent in the miniature gaming world that Fantasy Flight now, for the second year in a row, has launched their miniature gaming there. So last year it was Rune Wars, this year it was Star Wars Legion, and because of the strong interest in the Star Wars Legion, the Star Wars universe, of course, Adepticon wanted to support a day of tournament. So the game launched, was available to buy at Adepticon on Thursday. By Friday, they were setting up tournament tables for it.
Yep.
And it wasn't just like throw down a green mat.
Nope.
The Adepticon guys had already gotten, the larger models of X-Wings and TIE fighters, and built up a whole Tatooine with moisture evaporators, the whole thing. And if you go to our Twitter feed, you'll see it. It looked like it had been a miniature game for like 10 years. And there was plenty of I don't even know how they do it. I don't know where they find the time, the volunteers, the money. I don't know how it happens magically, but these guys are really passionate about making it the absolute best experience for miniature gamers. And it totally shows.
We kind of know how it happens because we have breakfast near them on Monday morning after our event.
They're kind of exhausted. Yes.
Exhausted, Russ. I have never seen a group of people working so hard, so long for just for the community, right? I mean, it's crazy and it's incredible. And they in large part spin their energy right into this whole process. Andy Rucker's joined us, ladies and gentlemen.
Indeed. Welcome to the chat, Andy.
Howdy to you as well. Okay.
So I was blown away too, Craig, and I was super excited to see all the stuff. And also, we should say that lest you think Adepticon is just another word there, Craig, lest you think Adepticon is just for miniature gamers. It mostly is, and it certainly is. And I wouldn't say to go there. If you're not a miniature gamer, I don't know if you want to go there just for that. But if you're in the greater Chicago area and you're a board gamer, their board game library is quite large now.
It's huge. And I can say, without a doubt, extremely heavy.
It is, and so I wouldn't, it's not on the scale as Origins or Gen Con, but it's a nice, huge, good library for you to play. So if you're going to Adepticon anyway, you're going to be there. Or you're in the Chicago area, maybe you're not a miniature gamer, but you want to see the spectacle. You got to go down there, see all the crazy miniature gaming, and then you get a Board Gamer 3 in the board game area. It is just a wonderful, wonderful convention. I'm so excited that it's still just as good as ever.
Yep, absolutely. And there's now so many games, and they're now on actual rolling metal racks that it makes a great backdrop if you want a picture with Russ and I.
You know what else is really cool, Craig? And this is something I think it's pretty obvious, but they have a quite large painting area set up, like a very large, long. It seats probably like 50 people or something. Now I know they have something similar in Gen Con, but this is somehow it still is intimate. Yeah, and there's guys that come there and gals that come there year after year. Some of them are like crystal brush, like high level world-class painters. And some of them are just folks who are like just hanging out and painting and chatting and getting tips from these, sitting right next to like these master professional painters. Like, yeah, you know what you want to do for shading here? Try this trick. You can really just get down to earth with these folks and share your passion. Watch someone using an airbrush for the first time, learn some tricks, watch them doing non-metal metallics. You get all those great tips and techniques, see the paints they like to use, see the brushes they like to use, walk right into the massive, the vendor hall is getting quite large there too now, Craig.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we're gushing, I know, but
gushing. Well, no, I'm going to gush a little bit more because talking about the experts and the painters, Duncan Rhodes, who is the #1 painter at Games Workshop, was giving classes all weekend long. And these guys are awesome. I mean, it's cool to watch them on Warhammer TV, but when when the elevator door opens and Duncan Rhodes is like, "Oh, you're going up, I'm going down," and then it's like, wow, that was just Duncan Rhodes.
That's another thing we should mention, Craig, is like, for many years, I'm going to give props to Games Workshop here because I know sometimes I'm a little bit critical of them, but for many years, Games Workshop kind of, in the very beginning of Adepticon, Games Workshop was supportive. Yep. And then they sort of, bowed out for a while. Right. But it never deterred the Adepticon guys. They knew that the player base wanted to play, Games Workshop games there, and they always supported them, regardless of how engaged. But Games Workshop is back there in force. Yep. Not only was Warhammer TV there with all their equipment, recording it, really giving Adepticon great exposure as well as support. But, to your point, famous painters, Graham McNeil's walking around for Black Library. Forge World is there. There's a great booth. I mean, Games Workshop, great surprise support. They really are back for the community, and I think that's a large part of why Games Workshop is as you say, Craig, in their ascendancy again. I think they're really remembering, why people buy their models, why people play their games, and they're supporting that kind of activity, which is fabulous.
Yeah, it's. I mean, and we don't. Yeah, it's. I can't. Yeah. It is. It's awesome. And it's obviously, you can tell from our voices, it's our favorite convention. And there's really not much more to say. I mean, Andy has joined us, like we said, and he's talking about how much it changed from 2012 to 2017. And I have to say, it did change. It was awesome. It's grown and it's expanded at the same time. Like we said, it has managed to maintain that intimate feeling of camaraderie that you just do not get at any of these bigger conventions.
And several miniature gaming companies are making announcements there. GW was, the Wild West Exodus folks were, the new Wild West Exodus stewards are making announcements about the new Dystopian Wars. So good stuff happening. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Really good stuff. So go ahead, Greg.
War Cradle. No, just saying that.
Yeah, War Cradle. Yeah.
They've bought another company, and they made that big announcement at Adepticon as well. It's just so these companies, they know they've got a captive audience. The entire miniature gaming world is focused on Chicago for that weekend, and they use it, and it's almost like this. It's a gestalt, if you will, Russ?
It is.
That, huh?
It is. Nice word. Yeah. Bonus points.
Because we're looking at them, so they're using that as a platform. Them using it as a platform makes us look even more, and it's just spinning up, and the excitement is just constantly ratcheting up. It's sad in a way because I'm usually pretty good at trying to get to bed at a reasonable hour, and
not here. Yeah,
I can do that at Gen Con, right? Unless there's like a big game of local guys, and I'm looking forward to that. At Adepticon, I literally cannot go to bed till 1 or 2 in the morning, which is
or 3
in the morning. Yeah, or 3, which is 4 for us. That's the time difference. Because even when I'm done, and it happened several times, even when I'm done, I'm going to walk down to the hall. There's going to be displays to see. There's going to be games going on. It's crazy. It just doesn't end. And it's hard to go to sleep when you know there's stuff going on out there that you want to watch.
Yeah. And some good points here. The swag bag is always amazing. Andy was asking about Star Trek Ascendancy. Galeforce 9 did give away Star Trek Ascendancy in the VIG bag. So the very important gamers, the people paid a little extra. Ascendancy was in there, although some other cool stuff. But even the basic bag, a lot of great stuff in there. A lot of, hardcover books from War Machine, miniatures from a variety of game systems. I mean, it was a great, as always, the value you get there is amazing. But you're right, Craig. I mean, you think and this kind of is a good segue into the games we played. So Craig and I brought both some miniature games and some board games with us. And one of the things that I thought was really astounding to me was I wanted to play Giant Killer Robots, GKR Heavy Hitters, which is a Kickstarter I backed a little while ago. This is the one from WETA Workshop. We'll be talking more about it later this show, so I won't jump into too much detail, but I really wanted to play it, and I really wanted to try this new recording format. And I'm like, it's a 4-player game. Craig and I already played it one-on-one. Want to play some other people. So one of the Adepticon guys is wandering around, one of the guys that works there, and Matt's like, hey, I said, Matt, you want to play this Heavy Hitters thing with us tonight? He's like, sure. Let me see if I can find you a venue and a couple other folks. And he did, and man, we hit it off. We had such a wonderful game, such nice folks. Him, the other folks who joined into the game. We had some people watching there. Jonathan was jumping in from Texas. He was helping us out. And I'm like, hey, Jonathan, you'll hear it in the thing. You want to read the narrative fluff from the game. And I gave him the mic, and he did a wonderful job. He hammed it up, did a great job. It reminded me a lot of when we used to do some of those crazy things at Gen Con, the crazy acting things out. And we immediately hit off, and I made such a nice connection. I was like, hey, you guys want to play Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea later tonight, just the 3 of us? And they're like, sure. And I came back, and again, such a great group of people to hang out with. I had just met these. I mean, I'd seen them before at Adepticon in the past, here and there, kind of shook hands, said hi. But it was nice to sit down with these guys, play Heavy Hitters for a couple hours, then come back a little later. And we stayed up to 3 a.m. playing Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air, having an absolute blast.
Yes, you did.
And it was like hanging out with old friends. It was just a really wonderful time. And everybody we saw there, everybody just the right frame of mind, the right good fun. So I know we're gushing, but in any case, so that was 2 of the ones I played, Craig. GKR, we will talk about later. Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air, I've talked about playing with my family. This is the first time I played it with other gamers, right? So we sat down, started at about 10:45, 11 o'clock, played for about 15 minutes, and then we realized the room we were in was closing, so we had to move. So we had to pack it all back up again, move. We just decided we'd restart because we got a half a turn in so we could learn what they were doing.
Yep.
And we just got so passionately into it. We played till 3 a.m. I really like this game. And I don't know if I've described it in detail in the show, but what's really amazing about it, this one I did not bring with myself to Adepticon because my set is 2 really large boxes. If you've seen the GKR box, this is actually bigger than that when these 2 are together, because in each box, Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air is a 4X game, right? Expand, exploit, exterminate, and the other X I'm forgetting right now. So you're trying to take over the world basically in high fantasy. And the core game comes with elves, dwarves, humans, and orcs. But then the expansion adds 4 more races to a maximum of 6 players at a time, but you got 8 total races to choose from. And the expansion is going to add your lizard people, your cat, your lion people, your undead, and goblins. And what's neat about this game is you got a lot of cool plastic. This is from the folks Gamelin Games, the folks that make tiny epic kingdoms, right? So someone over at Gamelin decided, you know what, we should just take the word tiny out and just make epic.
Right.
And so this game is epic. It's got great plastic for your serfs and your warriors. It's got really cool models for each of your heroes. Each faction's got a distinct asymmetric hero set that's different from everybody else's.
Yep.
And then you've got each faction has a cardboard ship that you put together in such a way that it's three-dimensional and you can put your plastic models in it, 2 of them in the ship. And each faction also has a flyer, a cardboard flyer that has a flying stand. You can also put guys in. So these serve as transports, but they're also very much pieces that can do battle in the game. So for example, the Orcs ship is actually a giant crocodile with a raft on its back. Yeah. So really fun game, a lot of different elements to it, a lot of cool decisions to make, but also a very simple game to learn and play. And testament to that is that we're here, we're exhausted. It's like, 10:30 at night on a con, and we played till 3 a.m, and we knew what we were doing. We never really ran into any complicated rules problems. Mm-hmm. It was really more around like the strategic challenges of what we should do next. So really liking this game. We got to get it to the table, Craig, you and I, so we can at least review it once, because it's a wonderful game.
I've heard.
Also, Craig got Firefly Adventures to the table, and so we're going to review that a little later, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. We'll talk more about our thoughts later on that at Adepticon. Also, Craig, so then at Adepticon, we have our Sunday night gaming, right? So every Sunday at Adepticon, and this is something we've been doing with them, I don't know, it feels like forever, but it's probably been about 5 years. I can't remember. But in any case,
it's been
longer, I guess, hasn't it?
Oh my 5 years, yeah.
It's been a long time. Anyway, let's pretend we don't know how long it is, because I don't want to admit my age. But in any case, what we do Sunday night at Adepticon, and Sunday nights after everybody's burnt out from their gaming, the miniature gaming all weekend, there's all these tournaments, really heavy thinking. I want to win first place. All that stuff happens. Then Sunday night comes and you just kind of need to relax. Now, some people fly out early, but a lot of people stay for the awards ceremony at 6, and you're not going to fly out and do the red eye. So you go out Monday morning. So you got nothing to do Sunday night. So a couple things happened. Some years they hold a poker tournament, but a while ago they asked us to come and start hosting a little board game event. And so those Sunday nights we come out, we run this board game event from like 8 at night till like 1 or 2 in the morning. And they leave the board game library open for us. We bring a few of our favorites also. A lot come from the manufacturers for prize support, and we give away a lot of fun stuff. This year we recorded a live version of Rapid Fire. You heard at the beginning of the show, and we just play a lot of games with people, teach them. And we played and we try to jump into the games ourselves. And so Craig and I played Ice Cool. Craig, what'd you think of Ice Cool?
I thought it was a blast. I'm hot and cold, no pun intended, on dexterity games and flick games in general, but this was a fun, fast one where even if you got bad flicks, which the game is pretty much designed to give you, it's fun and it's over quick enough that it's painless. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, so Ice Cool is you're playing these penguins, right? And they have these little curved bases like Weebles. You ever remember Weebles? Am I so old? Anyway, these penguin things, and the board is actually a bunch of nesting boxes inside the main game box that becomes sort of this frozen schoolhouse, if you will, with little doors between each chamber of the rooms.
The artwork is beautiful.
It is beautiful. And so you're basically flicking these little penguins around the school through the doors. And each door you get through, you get to pull a fish off the top to keep for scoring. But the problem is one of the penguins is the hall monitor. You should not be out of class. And his job is to try to catch you by bumping your piece. So it's basically a dexterity game.
Cool idea so that you can get in trouble.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really like it a lot, and it was just a great time. Craig, are you considering playing with Reese? I think you might like that one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look for it.
So another one I got to the table, and this was excited to try this one. So as listeners will know, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and so Doctor Who...
And I am not a big Doctor Who fan.
No, you're not. So Doctor Who Time of the Daleks came out a while ago, and I actually bought it, and I played it with my family, and actually didn't go over very well with my family. We had a little rough time with it. And my wife was kind of like really disappointed because she's a huge Doctor Who fan. This is the one where you play in the core box. It comes with 4 different incarnations of the Doctor, and you're trying to beat the Daleks to Gallifrey. And it's sort of like one of those Doctor Who specials where the different versions of the Doctor can be in there at the same time. Different timelines are happening. And the fluff is eventually there'll be expansions, assuming the game does well enough, with other incarnations of the Doctor. So eventually, I would assume someday all the Doctors will be available.
And how many?
And I believe they're on the 14th Doctor now. So if your Doctor dies, then you become the next incarnation of the Doctor that's not currently in play, right? It's the idea, and you're basically solving problems, and you're picking up the different companions, and there's these things called the timey-wimey cards, which are basically equipment. So you'll see like, fish fingers and custard and jammy dodgers and jelly babies and all the things you see from Doctor Who, right? So there's a lot of great nostalgia there. But the game felt very luck driven. But what was fun was when I was playing with the gamers there at Adepticon, a couple of the folks were hardcore Doctor Who fans, and we actually did quite well and really enjoyed it. So I think we may have got a couple rules wrong with the family, so I might try it with them again.
I was gonna say.
But it also may be that if everybody's a Doctor Who fan, you're fine. My daughters have never watched. I mean, we've tried to get them to watch Doctor Who, and they just don't care about it.
Yeah.
Nicole and I are big fans, but when half the table doesn't care about Doctor Who, I don't think the game transcends the genre.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not into the theme, Craig, you watched a bit of it. Did it do anything for you?
Well, I watched the whole game, Russ, and that's why I wanted to say that I'm not a big fan. I watched Doctor Who briefly when Tom Baker was the Doctor, so that would be the fourth Doctor. I learned watching the game.
You care for a jelly baby?
Indeed. And so I know enough to be dangerous, right? And of course, when Killjoy or whatever the Kilgrave was the Doctor, I watched again and enjoyed that until they switched. And then I was like, oh, that's right. They can't ever keep the same actor.
Right. And
so I think it's great. I thought it was really fun to watch. I thought it was neat. You don't have to pay any attention to the icons on the dice if you don't want to, but if you do, it's kind of telling a cool story. Oh, you've got to come up with 2 cool quotes and then run really fast, and then you need some military help.
Right, exactly.
It's really, so that was really fun to watch. Maybe you can't spend quite that much time focusing on it if you're actually playing, but there's so many different ways for you to re-roll the dice and to help each other, but at the same time, it's not really co-op because you want to get to the middle first. And I thought, from my knowledge of Doctor Who, and for the couple of tweaks that you figured out you were doing wrong with the family that would mitigate the luck, I thought they did a great job, and it looked like a lot of fun to me. I watched. I was wandering around the hall, making sure everybody's having a good time, making sure anybody needs help looking up rules or anything in any of their games if I could help. And I ended up standing and watching almost that whole game. It was so much fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think it's a good game. I think I need to play it again with the family. But I actually found myself really enjoying it there too, and I went in skeptical after my local play. So I'm glad to see that. Next, Craig and I played with many folks. We played Hex, along with Terrace from Geek Nation Tours, a perennial favorite.
Mrs. Terrace was there.
And Mrs. Terrace was there as well. Mrs. Geek Nation Tours. Yep. And it was as always, Hex is a fantastic time. Yep. This game is sort of like a must-have in your collection. If you don't have Hex from Smirk and Dagger Games in your collection for a great party game, you're really missing out. This is just a fantastic game. It's great fun to describe. And if you have any Harry Potter fans or just geeks, they'll immediately latch on to the theme. You don't need to know the theme or understand the theme to really enjoy it. It's a fun game, but it really, with a little bit of theming, it's even more. We were all gesturing like we're deflecting the spells, and it got even more fun. But,
and I mean, we should say that game went out 5 or 6 more times after.
Oh, yes.
And we don't push any games on anybody. We just, we're just there to make sure everybody's having fun. And Smirk and Dagger games get out a lot because they're fun and they're light and they're quick, and friends, especially after they've had a tense weekend of tournaments, want nothing better than to slap their friends silly.
Yeah, so I'm going back in time now. So that was everything I did on Sunday night. And then earlier at Adepticon, we did try more than a few demos / large games. Yeah. So we, I'm going to go in reverse order for my list here, Craig, just to confuse you. So first of all, on Friday night, we helped our friends at Firelock Games to do the Blood and Plunder mega battle they did there. Yep. And it was really neat to see how far their fan base has progressed. So last year, when Craig and I went out, the game was still largely new. People were just wanted to learn the rules, learn how it worked. They had seen maybe the Kickstarter or they'd seen some of the models. And so when people came to the game, they didn't really know the rules. And so Craig and I were yelling and cheering, and it was more of a crazy time. And no one was taking the game
seriously.
It was a ruckus. This year,
it wasn't.
Most everybody came to the table, owned their own stuff, knew the rules, and really wanted to get serious.
They did not want people cheerleading behind them.
They didn't want any crazy podcasters jumping up and down and yelling "Arr!" in the middle of a battle. So after we saw that they were well on their way to happiness, we sort of bowed out, but it was an amazing game to watch.
We should also say that last year's was almost impromptu. And the terrain was just kind of thrown together, and the mission wasn't thrown together. Mike and the guys knew what they wanted to do mission wise, but the table was it was a bunch of fat mats laid out quickly, and they had all the models from their booth, and that was all cool. This year, I brought some terrain. I was like, "Oh, hey, Mike, I'm going to bring some cool like pirate headquarter terrain," and they kind of took that and ran with it. And by the time we even got there with my little box of tents, they had an entire colony set up on this giant, massive board, and they had a historical mission all set up and ready to go. It was a battle for Tortuga, which of course becomes a big pirate haven, but in this point in history, it was just a little settlement, and the Spanish had come in with their native allies to try to wipe out the French and the English pirates. And so you had this really cool, in-depth and elaborate mission that they'd set up that we were watching. And there are a couple pictures of Russ and I just with our heads together on our phones, because they didn't need cheerleaders, but we were just taking nonstop pictures and tweeting them out.
Tweeting the pictures. So if you go through our Twitter feed from Adepticon, there's a lot in there, but you will eventually find Blood and Plunder. It was a great time to watch, and as Craig said, the terrain was amazing, but it was also fun to watch the tactics because the players all knew what they were doing, and they were doing some really neat stuff. So it was neat to see the game played at the next level. Yep. So it was a lot of fun. Also, we played a great demo. I think, Craig, you'd already played this with Seppi once.
I did.
But I had not had an opportunity to play the new game from Fight in the Box with our friend Seppi. He has a new game coming out called Processing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the game, I think, Craig, you mentioned it when we were talking about Captain Con this year, but Processing is this game where basically alien overlords are now processing various living organisms for different reasons. And so there are hippies or hipsters, and there are cows, and we have to decide how we are going to deal with these guys. And so it's a really interesting mechanics there where the players are basically given victory points based on what happens to things, and you're essentially kind of community voting on what should happen to different groups of people, and you're kind of trying to tell people what not to do without telegraphing exactly what your maximum score combination is. So you're kind of like trying to influence without kind of giving too much away. Really interesting mechanics. Much hilarity ensues based on the content of the cards and all the various puns that must and do come out. Really enjoyed this game. I think Seppi's got a winner here.
I think so too. It's just a lot of fun. It's light and fast, although there's a depth to it if you add just a couple more rules that he was explaining after the demo that make it a little more complicated than Squirrel or Die, but still really, really good and funny and fast and furious. And I love the social aspect where you're just going around and you're voting, and that's all you're doing. You're voting what's going to happen to these various cows and hipsters, and you kind of start building alliances. Like, oh, I'm gonna put turn this one into meat. Oh, I'm gonna do it too. Oh, but then the next round, everybody's using different cards. So the guy who was your ally last game, and you thought you'd built like a rapport with him, now he's got totally different goals, and so you can't count on anybody. It's crazy,
right?
Craziness. Loved it. Had a blast.
So that was good times. And then what was really interesting about this year's Adepticon was that we had a couple of miniature games that are either out or getting close to being out that Craig and I have been eyeing at various conventions, Gen Con, other places, that we haven't had a chance to get to the demo table on these.
Right.
And we were actually
not for lack of trying.
We're not for lack of trying, but this year at Adepticon, there were a couple moments, and this is what's great about Adepticon. It's not super mobbed, so you can get in and do things and talk to people. So one of the ones, Weird had a great booth there, Weird Miniatures, and they were showing off their new Army Scale game that I call Army Scale, or Mass Combat, depending on where you're from, The Other Side. And so they had a lot more cool models to show, so you could kind of get a lot more of a feel for the direction that some of the factions were going, which I really liked. And they had two factions set up on the table. One of them was, I forget their name, but they're basically an aquatic creature faction, so sort of like creatures from the bottom of the ocean.
Something horde.
Yeah, so you got those guys, and the leader was sort of this female sort of tentacle. She wasn't really a mermaid, but she was like a tentacle water wielding witch, warlock, sorceress sort of situation there. And she had various creatures on stands that were either packs of sort of salamandery things or packs of sort of like scorpion, aqua scorpion.
Gibbering horde, the gibbering horde.
And then on Craig's side, so I played them. And in the demo, Craig played these guys.
So I played these guys that Russ is going to describe one way, but I'm going to give Weird the benefit of the doubt and describe it the other way first, which would be they were called the Abyssinians, which we can probably call something along the lines of the Black Panther faction.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they don't have to quote one of their folks there, if we don't have armored rhinos for this faction at some point, I will be shocked.
Yep.
So it was definitely a Black Panther-esque sort of faction, which was great to see.
Right.
Really, really cool.
And it's actually a very Black Panther backstory too. Basically, this African nation in the middle of the continent has had access to soul stone technology because of an earlier rift that had opened between the worlds, and they've had it much longer than everybody else on Earth. And so they are, in fact, more advanced than everybody else with all their soul stone technology. So it has to be, at least in small part, an homage to the Black Panther storyline, which I would never have known if it wasn't for the movie. But there were some interesting parallels, and it was neat too because, again, like Adepticon, which makes it a lot cooler place than a lot of other places you might go, the designer of the game was there to help us with the demo. So
right.
That
was wonderful, and it was a good demo. We got to see the game being, the core rules. We got to play quite a few turns together. It basically uses a very similar card mechanic to what am I trying to say? Malifaux. Thank you.
Yep.
But the biggest difference is there's a resource now, kind of like Soul Stones, but it's a different resource, and there's many of them, tactics tokens or something. Yeah. And you spend these for a variety of things like reflips or whatever, what have you, for abilities. It's really interesting. I think they might have something here. I'm still cautiously optimistic for them. But I do feel like if you like, and they simplified the card mechanics a little bit. They pulled a little bit of the complexity that slows Malifaux down, I think, out a little bit. Yeah. So I don't know if it's enough to get Craig into a game like this, but I am dangerously close to being interested. Craig, what's your feeling about your play?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really nice implementation of the core mechanics of Malifaux into a mass combat game where you're activating units. I thought it was really neat the way the units broke down into fire teams. So it's not model by model shooting, and it's not unit by unit shooting, but each unit has a certain number of fire teams. So larger discs with the guys on them, and those, although they have a unit coherency, they can act independently as far as shooting and fighting goes. And I thought that was really neat. The card mechanic, I don't know if it's going to be brain burnery. I didn't think Malifaux was for a long time, but it did kind of just wear me away eventually. I really liked that Abyssinian faction, but I'm not sure what kind of depth of what kind of unit depth they're at right now. And I'm sort of hesitant to dive into another miniatures game where there's not a lot of unit depth. So all the armies are going to look very similar. So I am definitely going to watch it. I am interested in it. If there's enough interest locally that I can conveniently, I can, depend on getting a game fairly regularly, I will look at all the factions again. But, you're already halfway doomed when you do a demo, and you kind of like the faction that you used in that demo. You kind of feel like you're going to, abandon them to go somewhere else. So I really did like that Abyssinian faction. So I might pick some of that up later on down the road if the game proves to have legs, for sure.
Yeah, it's dangerous for me as any faction I play that I look at and go, I could crank these out with an airbrush in half a day. That's always dangerous. But neither Craig nor I actually pre-ordered it. We were impressed with where it is, but I think we're still in the wait and see mode on the other side, especially for the model ranges, the different factions, and the final rule set. There are still some areas where I think the rules are getting dangerously close to being final, but you could also tell that there were still some things being worked, some kinks worked through. But I like where they're going. Yep, good potential there. Yeah. One game, so that game we went into the other side. We were kind of like, all right, this could be good. We're not sure. Let's find out.
Right? Neither of us were like, we want to check out this game. We were more like, everybody wants to know how this game is, so let's check it out.
Meanwhile, then we went by the Drop Fleet Commander area. Yeah. Now, Drop Zone Commander, Craig and I have both played.
Yep.
Long-time listeners know we've never reviewed it on the show. And I think we mentioned a couple times that in achievements, we did play Drop Zone. There are things about Drop Zone I do not care for. It's not my style of game. Also, the ships don't particularly appeal to me either. So there are friends of ours who like Drop Zone.
Is a land-based game.
Yes. So how drop zone works is, and we should like it because it's kind of epic scale, but so drop zone, you are really fighting on the ground in a city typically, and there's lots of troops. But the thing is, there is air power that comes in and adds more troops to the game, right?
Yeah.
Drop fleet is really interesting, and when I saw people playing it, I was really compelled to want to try it out. The difference, drop fleet is a fleet engagement game. So think Battlefleet Gothic, think Firestorm Armada.
Yep.
But here's the twist that I think is pretty freaking brilliant. You're fighting in orbit around a planet or in super upper atmosphere or high orbit.
Yeah.
And the reason that's super interesting is now it's not super contrived to have terrain in the battlefield. So when you're playing a space battle, the fact that there's a planet on the same table as an asteroid belt, as the same table as a moon, so you have interesting things to fly around, is really kind of silly because the distances in space are so large, you would never, it's fun to do because it makes the game fun, but it's not, it's some abstraction, it kind of breaks the game for me a little bit. What happens with this game, though, is because you're in orbit, and what's extra interesting is part of the terrain is there are little areas that are identified down, supposed to be down on the ground, so little small tiny cities that you're hovering over, and basically the fluff is you're trying to deliver the troops down there that for the other game Drop Zone Commander to happen. So you could link the games, but you don't need to. So all of a sudden now you have clear objectives, and there's like space debris floating around. But what's brilliant about this game, there are two mechanics that Craig and I, so we're like, we got to try this game, right? So we had a moment we could get in and try it. They had a nice setup there. Yeah, gorgeous models, the core box models, the humans
on a map that looks like a satellite photo. I mean,
yeah, of an alien planet.
Game
so
amazing.
So here are the two mechanics, and Andy Rucker, I'm interested to see what you think about this as a Navy guy. So the two mechanics that blew me away. One, so the ships have bases that have dials on them.
Yep.
And so there's no tokens on the table, or very few tokens. You only get a token if there's like a critical hit on your systems or something. Most of the game, though, there are these dials. The dials have pins in them to mark damage, but more importantly, the dial spins to show different color codings, right? The first color codings that you'll be interested in is your altitude. So you can be in high atmosphere, a lower atmosphere, or atmosphere, and then lower atmosphere. So above atmo, in atmo, below atmo. So already that immediately gives you a feeling of a submarine. You have different altitudes and depths, and different ships function better at different depths. So some ships are atmosphere capable and some are not. And the part of the game is to get into atmo because you need your drop ships, your ships that are launching from part of your fleet that can launch drop ships, to get low. But they're not very good in upper atmospheric combat or in orbital combat. So you got to protect those ships with your main ships, and they're diving low and diving high. But there's also cool criticals that can happen where a ship that's not designed to go into atmo starts to have degrading orbit and starts to fall into lower depths and really starts to get damaged. The other thing that I thought was really great is how range is measured. Mm-hmm. So the ability to shoot somebody is based on two different ranges. One is your ability to do detection. So it's your, what do they call it, Craig? Your scanner, I think it's called.
Yep.
So that's the ability for your ship to scan something. And these ranges are typically like 7-8 inches, right?
Right.
But then all ships also have a signature profile. And that's the number of inches someone can detect you from.
Yep.
So my ability to shoot Craig's ship is my scanning range, so 8 inches, plus Craig's signature range, which is 6 inches. So 6 plus 8 is 14. So I can shoot him at range 14. But the really cool part is different events in the game that can happen that change your signature size. So if you want to run silent, for example, your signature goes down to 0. If an explosion goes off near you, it flares up and increases your signature by a couple of inches. And there's actually a dial that sets whether you've got a minor flare, where it's just sort of like you're kind of detectable, or a major spike, where you're really detectable. So, for example, if you go weapons free and fire everything, you become very detectable, and your range, your signature is way large. Right. I have not really seen another sci-fi game really leverage this kind of thinking, and I love it.
Yep.
It feels like the kind of thing you deal with submarine combat. I really loved it a lot. That plus the altitude just sold me, Craig. What did you think?
I've been watching it. Going back to how we kind of felt about Drop Zone Commander, I was very hesitant. So when they did the Kickstarter, I've also tried to move away from Kickstarters. So those two things, I decided I didn't do the Kickstarter. And then I tried to do a demo at Gen Con, and I couldn't get near the booth but that was partly because Gen Con, partly because super crowded, and partly because it felt like the booth was not very well organized. I went there several times when it was nearly empty, and I was told, "Oh, we're not doing demos right now." So that's always very frustrating to me, and it kind of puts me off a game. So I didn't try for the rest of the weekend. So this time around, I felt almost like you were pushing it a little bit more, Russ. Like you were very interested and curious, and that kind of sparked my curiosity over again. And so at different times, each of us would do a drive-by of the booth to see what the situation was. And then eventually we were both separated in the vendor hall, and I saw that there was an opportunity. I'm like, okay, let's go. And we did a demo. For all the reasons that you said, I really, really enjoyed it. I wish there were more factions. Their world their universe is extremely well developed, however, and there's not really a lot of room for them to expand in their in the scheme of their story. There's not a lot of niches to be filled in or to have races just suddenly appear. I mean, there's one or two sort of mystery races in the background that might be able to show up one day. Although I must say I do like the races that they have. The Scourge is the aliens. I really like their kind of Revenge of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of feel to them. And there's two different human factions, and then there's the sort of the super hyper advanced faction that every sci-fi game has to have. But then that super hyper advanced, which is usually, looks down on the younger races and we're better. In this instance, they're tribal and they're warlike. So it's a very interesting kind of spin on that. So the background really engaged me, unlike and it's the same background as the ground game, but for some reason it kind of hooked me. And the models look beautiful. The peripherals look great. The space stations, the cool little tokens that you put down on the ground to denote the different sectors that you're trying to take over. So I mean, it hooked me from the beginning. And then the mechanics that you're talking about are very, very cool to me. The scanning and the signature aspect, the way damage works, and it is a bloody fast game.
Oh yeah, we got shit blown up in turn one. This isn't like some of your sci-fi naval games where it's like 3 turns of pounding away to kill one ship, right? They're popping like pegs.
If I had one complaint about the other games, it would be just the constant war of attrition that you're fighting, and that it's just nonstop. And I know that's cool, and that some people love that because you just see the slow degradation of these massive ships. But to me, that game just takes forever, right? That you're talking 3 or 4 hours to play a game like that. This Drop Fleet Commander game that we had was just blowing up left and right, and they, how both Battlefleet Gothic and Firestorm Armada, when you kill a ship, they might blow up. Well, in this game, they definitely blow up, and yet less for one, and so it was. Chain reaction is a thing and we saw that too. We saw one ship wipe out other ships, and so it's much more cinematic to me and quick. I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed it to what level, Russ?
Oh, well, we may have bought some.
We may or may not have spent some considerable amount of money to get.
Yeah. Well, the other danger is, so here's the thing. We had been reasonably well behaved.
Very well behaved.
Yeah, until this demo. And so it was the end. It was Sunday, so it was the end of the weekend. And part of us may have been like, well, gee, since we've been so well behaved on our spending, maybe we should get into it. But I would not have gotten into it if I didn't enjoy it. So I'm really looking forward to. I mean, it's one demo, not enough to judge. It was enough to get Craig and I to buy in. I'm sure we'll hear more about it on the show in coming episodes.
Absolutely.
So, Craig, that does it for me. Andy, I will say. You asked about GKR versus the new Pacific Rim board game. I'm going to take a hard look at the Pacific Rim board game. I like Pacific Rim, but I really like GKR, and it's going to be hard for me to think of a better game than that, unless I'm just about I think I can safely say I'm going to stick with GKR because I like the little mini robots. And I like the idea that everybody's got a robot. I like the configurability of the weapon loadouts. I don't think I'll have to go look at the Pacific Rim board game to see the level of customization and stuff there, but I don't think you're gonna see that quite that level of detail. And I love the crazy sponsorship stuff. So I just like everything going on in GKR. Also, I'm trying like crazy to resist the Monster Apocalypse miniature game. So if I do get into another giant kaiju fighting game, it will probably be the Monster Apocalypse miniature game before the Pacific Rim board game.
I mean, looking at the Pacific Rim Kickstarter, it's like, the game comes with one big monster and one big robot. And if you're a Kickstarter if you're a Kickstarter supporter and early adopter and it does really well, you'll get two more. So it's not fundamental.
It's not going to have the depth.
And I mean, GKR was designed by WETA Workshop, and those guys have some crazy credentials for building worlds. And as Russ said, in there you've got the corporate sponsorships, the story, which is very shallow and at the same time deep enough to really get into and enjoy as a fun backdrop, as opposed to like the end of the world kind of scenario. So it is a good time to be a giant robot kaiju fan. That is true.
Well, that's my games. Craig, what did you play?
Pretty much all the same things you played, Russ. You did miss one. You missed Steam Forged Games God Tier that we.
Oh yeah, well yeah, we didn't really. We watched it. I don't know that
we had ourselves walked through to.
Yes. But let's talk about that. So, what did you think of it?
It's interesting because, of course, we had an exclusive "Don't Talk About It" meeting with, well, not really meeting. We were just having coffee, but at Gen Con a couple years ago with Matt and the guys over at Steamforged, and they told us about this wacky new idea they had in the world that they were designing, and it sounded really intriguing. That the guys behind Guild Ball were going to make a miniatures war game. That was pretty cool. What they've come up with is sort of like one of these hybrid board game miniatures games combos where you're working on a hex map. It's a relatively small footprint, but it's a neat idea, and it's got some cool mechanics to it where you're moving around and you're getting points for sort of tagging areas on the board, as well as taking out the other guys. And it's got a push-pull tug of war mechanic with the score, which reminded me very much of the Battles of Westeros, which has the little score track on the side where you start in the middle, and as you do good things, it pulls the score your way, but then the other guy can pull the score his way. So it seems like it's going to be a fast, neat game that has one of the new aspects of miniatures games that I've noticed is this idea that there's no real clear-cut factions. It's more a case of there's natural alliances, kind of like you've got the good guys and the bad guys, but in them you've got a bunch of different commanders with you can combine them as any way you want. And God Tier looks to be another one of those. And the very highest level overview idea is that in this world, gods ascend, get really powerful, but then they die, and in dying, bits of themselves fall back to the earth. And when that happens, there's a massive cataclysm, and most of society is destroyed. Those that are left behind start to hunt down these little chunks of godhood and absorb them and become more and more powerful in an attempt to become gods themselves. And so your war band might have 3 or 4 regularly sized dwarves and then one giant dwarf who happens to be roughly the size of a human. But and same thing with elves. And so you've got all of the basic fantasy races, but every one of them has kind of like this big champion that goes with them. So I thought it was a really neat concept, and I'll definitely be watching for it when it hits Kickstarter in April.
Yeah, the mechanics are really interesting, and I did like that slider, and I like this concept of mid-game ground capturing and sort of enchanting and it being on a hex was interesting too. So it gave it sort of a board game flavor. Yeah. It'll be definitely one to watch.
Absolutely. And then I had a late night while Russ was playing Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air. I was playing a game by Anvil 8 called Frontline No Comrades with a bunch of drunk people. I would not recommend
that. Always makes it better, right?
I would not recommend this. No. And I don't know if it was the alcohol or if it was the combination of personalities involved. Frontline No Comrades is kind of a fun game, I think, if you're playing with the right crowd, where each of you takes the role of somebody in the Russian Revolution or World War I. I'm a little confused. Again, there was a lot of alcohol. I was one of 3 sober people at the table. So obviously that's going to put you at a disadvantage right there. So each one of you has a card, and they're all lined up, and you're basically the front line heading towards the enemy. And all you're doing is trying to shuffle around your place in line, because there's going to be constant weapons and shots and dog attacks coming in on everybody, and you just want to be the last person to die. At least that was how the game was explained to me. There were 8 of us, and the game lasted an hour and a half.
That seems long.
That is extremely long for a fun, theoretically quick card game.
Well, clearly it's misrepresented. What does it say on the back of the box?
I don't know. I didn't look. I didn't have access to the back of the box, except I took it. I bet I could look on Twitter, because I did tweeted a picture of the box out to the Twitterverse, just so I could say what we were playing. And I was a little bitter, because I started the evening saying, like, hey guys, who wants to play Firefly? And they were like, no, we don't have time. Let's play this. And Firefly Adventures could easily be done in an hour and a half. So that was, I was a little disappointed. I think I played it last year and came away with the same feeling. So I think it's definitely a stab your neighbor, mess with your friends kind of game. And if you're in the wrong group, maybe, I mean, there was some weird vindictive stuff going on. At one point, there was somebody just throwing random cards down because he was sick of it and he didn't want to play anymore. And so you're trying to take the game seriously, or as seriously as you can. And then that's all getting thrown into the mix. So I would say disappointed. No hate,
Right.
Just disappointed. It really wasn't. I don't think I'll give it another shot, because I do believe this was my second. And I said that out of order because I wanted to end on a super high note, which was best game of Frostgrave ever. I had so much fun with my game of Frostgrave with Terrace, and Brent was the guy who was running the Frostgrave games for Osprey all weekend, and Joe, the designer of the game. So the 4 of us were playing Frostgrave on this amazing table that Brent had put together using a bunch of 3D printed terrain and the old GW Osgiliath ruins, which combined flawlessly. And then he painted them all up and he covered them in snow, and it was just a gorgeous, gorgeous table. And it was very, very fluffy. There were these wells all over the place. And if you got in contact with a well, you could heal. And if you got in contact with a well and you had gathered enough money over the course of the adventure, you could kind of like sort of summon in a potion of resurrection in case any of your guys died. You were playing straight up Frostgrave. So you were trying to go for these treasures, but the treasures were sort of immediate gratification. So instead of just grabbing the treasure and have to drag it off the board, which I do sometimes find tedious, instead, you immediately got to find out what was in the treasure and use it. There was some frost giants just wandering around. You could summon those. There were some magic items that were good against frost giants, and it was random where the frost giants showed up. So as we were fighting, we were kind of fighting each other, but then you would get a frost giant show up in your backfield, and you're trying to deal with that. There were 2 bodyguard frost giants, then the queen frost giant, then the king frost giant. And so it just kept building and building crazier and crazier. And it really, to me, it sort of exemplified what Frostgrave is and what its real strength is, which is fun, fast, friendly games. I would never want to play this in a tournament. It's way too swingy with the D20s. But when everybody's just having a good time and you're not taking it personally, when somebody shoots all the way across the board and takes out your ranger on the top of a tower just before he was going to open a chest, things
Not that happened.
Not that happened. Or let's say your dog runs all the way across the board and attacks the other guy's apprentice. Sorry, Brent. And so, I mean, all kinds of wacky, cool stuff was happening. And people it was. Have you ever played blackjack, Russ?
Yes, I have.
Like on a cruise ship or someplace like that. It reminded me of that occasionally when, you've got that one guy at the table who's taking it very seriously and going things like, why did you take a card? That card should have been mine. You didn't want to take a card. This is kind of like, why did you attack my apprentice? You've got a giant right behind you. Why are you attacking my apprentice? And it was like, well, because I want to. And Joe and Terrace were kind of like opposed, and they had just naturally, the flow of the table had kind of brought them together in a way that they were just constantly battling each other and accidentally almost like taking pot shots at the giants as they ran by. It was just a blast. Everything about that game was awesome. It was really the high point of the whole con for me. Like the camaraderie, the gaming, the miniature gaming, you're playing with the designer, everything about that was why I love Adepticon. And that pretty much is it for me for games, Russ. What about modeling for you?
Well, excellent. I'm glad you mentioned that. So I'm going to cover it's sort of in an interesting way on modeling here, kind of like we do at Gen Con, Play by Mob. I'm going to talk about models I've recently acquired at Adepticon.
Right.
So I did buy quite a bit of models. One of the things I've discovered that makes me feel warm and fuzzy is when I go to conventions now, if I buy things for games I already have, I feel much better about it than if I buy net new games. Now, that said, I obviously bought Drop Zone Commander, and I also bought Relic Blade, which, by the way, Drop Fleet Commander,
Yeah.
Relic Blade was really cool to see up close. Relic Blade is a relative. I mean, it's not that new. It's been around a couple of years, but it started on Kickstarter, and it is an amazing sculpt, amazing, really neat rule set in which it's all a D6 driven mechanic. And essentially, when you go to activate your model, it's a fantasy skirmish game. So low model count. And I know there's lots of fantasy skirmish games out there, and I have many of them. But this one appealed to me because I liked the models anyway for D&D. So I kind of wanted to buy them anyway, just because there was a gnome there that I really could use for one of my characters. And then I really liked the ranger pose and some other stuff there. I was like, man, these guys all look cool. So I got some of them. And then as I was sitting there with the designer and he was explaining to me the rule mechanics. What's that, Craig?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Was really impressed by the mechanics. So you start with this little dice pool and you spend the dice to do things. So if you want to move, you just take a D6 out of the pool and you move. Other different actions require you to roll certain dice and have target numbers. And you can take your extra dice from your pool and use them to boost. So it's got kind of a boost mechanic, kind of like War Machine, which is one of my favorite mechanics in War Machine. I love luck mitigation. So I really like a lot about this game. Very simple, but a lot going on there. So I picked up Relic Blade. But then the rest of the models I got were really all around games I already have, and they really were on D&D. So I bought the Reaper Bones guys are always at Gen Con, and they're also at Adepticon in full force with those giant cases. If you've gone to a convention with it, they're got giant cases of pretty much their entire line. And lo and behold, in a very prominent display at the end cap, if you will, they had Mal Drakkar Tyrant, or as I like to call him, the non-IP infringing 5-headed multicolored dragon. And I got him because, as many of the listeners will know, I am currently playing the Tyranny of Dragons campaign with my kids. And the spoiler alert, the second section half is called Rise of Tiamat. So you might want to. So what I ended up getting this model. It's a massive model. It's huge. In fact, it is ginormous. And I will tweet pictures that I'm assembling. And actually, Craig, while we're chatting right now, I'm gluing them together.
Oh, really?
Or her, I should say her together. So I'm gluing her together. She's huge. She is to scale. There haven't been, and one of the big things about the most recent Reaper Bones miniature Kickstarters was the centerpiece of the Kickstarter. This, Tiamat-like dragon that is hard to find at scale. I think there's been one done before.
Has anybody ever done it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anybody's done it to scale.
There's one.
Yeah, not to scale properly. There's been several different attempts.
It was the Partha one was tiny.
Yeah, it was not cheap. It was like $150, I think, for this thing. Yep. But the size of it, totally worth it. The sculpt quality, amazing. I'm really enjoying putting it together. I cannot wait to get my airbrush on this thing. It looks fantastic.
It does look
so cool. Super excited about that. And then, as I said, I got a couple of the D&D models from their range as well for various characters also. So very pleased with my miniature purchase. How about you, Craig?
Well, quickly before Adepticon, I wanted to get a bunch of stuff painted for Adepticon, so I painted up some models for my Frostgrave warband. Oddly enough, they were Russ is showing the room his giant dragon. Not distracting at all. Some dogs and treasure tokens, all with the snow effects on it. So that was cool. I wanted to finish my Necromunda gangs, and there was a little confusion between Dave and myself. He needed a gang, and I thought I could get it to him in time. So I finished both of my Necromunda gangs. So I've got the Eschers and the Orlocks all done. I wanted to have some cool 3D terrain for my Firefly game. So I did crates and safes. And the tokens, actually, on the flip side, have icons on them, either numbers of credits that you get if you open that crate, or a little icon meaning you get a piece of war gear. So I figured out how to get those icons or numbers on the bottoms of the safes and the crates. And I did 4 terminals from Tiny Terrain, which is a new product that you can get from miniatures or miniature market. And they are very cool. They're very cool. I was very excited because based on one of the warships that I saw at Battleship Cove. It was a Soviet era East German missile frigate that had been given to, or not given, but sold to the U.S. Navy. And one cool thing was all of the controls on the bridge and other parts of the ship are all in, parts of them are in German and parts of them are in Russian. And so there's like masking tape over each button that labels it in English what that button does. And so I kind of wanted to give that impression. So I painted on little areas where the masking tape would be and tried to make it look like somebody had been labeling the controls for these different terminals with masking tape. I think that came out pretty cool. So that was neat. And the one thing I would say, they've got a huge catalog now of this tiny terrain. It's really cool. It's extremely well sized. It's not too small. It's very affordable. The only thing is the release agent they use in their molds is industrial strength. So the way you get it, nothing is going to stick to any of this resin. It's all resin terrain. No paint is going to stick to this stuff. You have to scrub it with grease cutting, like dishwashing soap. I learned the hard way because I sprayed it first, and
that sounds hard.
All of the primer. Well, you just with a toothbrush. It's not that hard. It's just you're like soaping it up and then rinsing it off. And then the guys from Tiny Terrain were at Adepticon, so I got to talk to them a little bit, and they did say if you use the Krylon camouflage flat spray, which you can get at Walmart or Target, or maybe not Target, but like Lowe's, other places like that. That's actually designed for resin boat hulls. So it's really good for resin as well. But that's kind of what I used, and it didn't stick. So make sure you wash it first. And then my acquisitions, I got a couple cool Bones civilians to use for Firefly. Drop Fleet Commander we already talked about. Relic Blade. I got the Lone Guard, which are these cool kind of like Night's Watch sort of characters. And I got a little bit more Tiny Terrain, so you can tell that I wasn't turned away by the release agent issue. I got a really cool big radar dish, and they've got like every week they've got new stuff going up on that website too. So check it out. And that was all me. What about you, Russ? For other?
Oh yes. Well, let's see here. We got a little echo going on here.
Ooh.
Hopefully that'll resolve itself soon. So first of all, books I'm enjoying. Not a lot on the other list here because I was traveling to Adepticon and back. Still playing Monster Hunter with my daughter, niece, and nephew, so really enjoying that. As far as books I'm enjoying, so when Ross Watson was on the show, he recommended a book, and as he described it, I knew it was a book I had to check out, and I am not disappointed. And that book is Promise of Blood by Brian McLean. McClellan? I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah. McClellan. McClellan. Thank you. McClellan. Brian McClellan. And it's book one of the Powder Mage series. So I think Ross defined it as the Powder Mage series. And man, is this a good book. I don't want to spoil anything, but the world building is fantastic. It is a sort of high fantasy, but sort of set in the age of muskets. So not high fantasy is wrong. It's a fantasy book set in the age of muskets. So, but then an alternate world. So it's not in our world. It's sort of a fantasy realm, but there aren't any elves or dwarves or anything, at least not yet. But what you do have is different, magically imbued humans. You have the privileged, who are basically sorcerers. You have the knacked, who are people who have basically one small magical ability. So like, one gentleman is an investigator, and his knack is he never forgets anything ever. Or another knack might be able to detect people who are privileged, that kind of thing. But the privileges are like high-level sorcerers. They can blow up buildings, and, you don't want to mess with them in battle. But the one that's really interesting and kind of an unusual one is the Powder Mages. And the Powder Mages are essentially people who can work magic with black powder. So, everybody carries muskets and guns and swords. There's sort of that time period. But the Powder Mages, they can lick or sniff powder, and it heightens their senses, and they can see really far and detect things and become hard to kill and heal. But better yet, they can actually control the explosions and guide their bullets as they shoot them. Not unlike, it has a little reminiscent of gun mages in War Machine. But what's really neat about them is if someone's about to shoot them, and this scene is very early in the book, so it's not really a spoiler, the guy will pull the trigger, and the Powder Mage can harness the combustion inside the chamber of the gun channel it so the ball just rolls out of the barrel of the gun, and then redirect the energy somewhere else, so like under the feet of the guy shooting it and make him fall over, that kind of thing. So it's really, really interesting stuff. I love the world, but more importantly, the political intrigue going on is very high level. It's not quite Game of Thrones, but dangerously close, and it could still evolve to that. So I'm really enjoying this, and I highly, highly recommend Promise of Blood, the Powder Mage series. Cool. What about you, Craig?
I've gone back again, mainly because I was trapped on an airplane without anything else to read. The Last Colony by John Scalzi, which is in the third book in his Old Man's War series. And I like it. And I mean, it's a reread for me, so it's not surprising that I go back and forth to it, but still enjoying it. I am literally have 10 minutes left to finish Persepolis Rising, which is the next book in the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. And it is awesome. And I'm not going to say anything other than that. And if you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to love it even more because it's just awesome. That's all I'll say. And then TV, speaking of Star Wars, I just today finished the Star Wars Rebels finale. I really liked it a lot. Got a little choked up, I'll admit, at the very end there. A little confused over what they're going to do next because they kind of did leave it a little open-ended with some of the plot lines. Not sure how I felt about the space whales, but hey, I'll go with it because it was cool.
Space whales. Just
started Timeless, this new season of Timeless, and I'm only halfway through the new episode, but
isn't it good?
Show. I love that show, and this new episode is fantastic.
Yeah, good season. All right, cool.
Me.
That's our achievements. Any more achievement, Craig?
Nope, I am all achieved out.
Me too. Whew.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland? I used to have my own segment, now I'm relegating to announcing this pap...
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey everyone, welcome back to another App of the Ep. This time around, I want to talk about a brand new app available to iOS. It's not new everywhere else though. So this app has been on Steam now for at least a year. I want to say 2, maybe even a little longer. And it's Armello, Armello. This game I bought it on Steam, like I want to say like a year and a half ago or so, maybe even a little longer. And when I did, I got it because I thought the girls and I would enjoy playing it, and we do. But it's a wonderful turn-based digital board game. I think is the best way to describe it. So it's got card mechanics, it's got dice mechanics, but I love the world. So in this world, imagine, think about Walt Disney's Robin Hood movie, where Robin Hood was a fox and Little John was a bear, and Prince John was a lion. So this game has got that sort of thing where all the main heroes and people are different, humanized, anthropomorphized animals. And what's wonderful about it is the rich world, the music, the art style, the story, the different heroes and how you care about them. And what's really fun about it is the demo, the tutorial, takes you through different aspects of the game from different perspectives of these heroes. So one minute you're learning about the brave wolf clan warrior, and the next minute you're learning about the sneaky rat sort of thief rogue character, and then later you're playing the part of a bear sort of cleric. And as you learn these different perspectives and see these different hero stories, you're learning the fundamentals of the game that later you can play as a massive board game, sort of digital board game. Now, on the Steam version of the game, you can play multiplayer. So you can all jump in as different characters. It's turn-based. Games are epically long, though. They take a very, very long time. And so one of the things we found is because the game is so long and turn-based, we find that when we sit down in front of our computers, we end up playing games that are faster paced and maybe a little less waiting downtime between players' turns. So we end up playing, StarCraft or something. But that's what's so brilliant about Armello now being available on mobile, on iOS, because now it's a wonderful thing to play. Take a turn or two or three while you're waiting in line or waiting for the movie to start or waiting for a friend to pick you up. It's a perfect game for that format. And again, they've managed to transfer the richness, the beauty of the world, as well as the mechanics work just fine. So the game's got all the depth of the PC version. You'll feel like you're playing the same game. It translates perfectly to touch. The drag and drop of the cards, the art on all the cards. Like when you're looking at your sword, it's a beautifully drawn sword on a rack, and then there's a gleam animated across that. I mean, there's just no little bit of detail is ignored in this game. It's just a wonderfully, wonderfully crafted game. And the best part is you can get it for free. Try the demo out, get through the demo parts of the tutorial. There are then in-app, microtransactions. I think when I bought it on Steam, though, I bought it straight up, for $10 and had it forever. So I feel like you're getting to a point where you own everything you need to play it well. A lot of the microtransactions are cosmetic. So, for example, you can buy different dice sets, right? So when you unlock the tutorial for Clan Wolf, you can buy the Clan Wolf dice set. Does it help you in the game? No. Does it look cool? Sure. It's just like buying that colored dice set for your new 40K army, right? So it's very much, this is written, people who really understand video games, really understand good user experience, really understand great art and great storytelling, but they also understand board games and board gamers, and a lot of those things that we love to do are built right in there. So check it out. It's Armello on iOS.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the App, a segment in which,
Hey, less of that. More just getting on with the show.
seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back. Now we're doing something very different than we've ever done before. I'm here live at Adepticon. Craig is setting up a game for us. We've got some folks here hanging out who are going to play with us. Why don't we sort of introduce everybody real quick at the table. Who do we have to my left here?
Joe Adams.
Joe, and what do you do here at Adepticon?
A little bit of everything. We do setup, tear down, build terrain, run board game area, and anything that needs done, really.
So you're just like, if it's got to get done, you're the guy who does it.
One of the guys that does it, yes.
Excellent, excellent. And Joe, to your left here, who's there?
This is Andrew Brown, and I am like Joe, a little bit of everything. This weekend I'm running Star Wars Armada after not playing it for 2 years. So,
awesome. And then Bob Oswald over here is just watching here. Bob, say hi.
Hello from Chicago.
Live from Chicago. And then also we have here with us, just joining us right now, it's Seppi Yoon. Seppi, hello, how you doing?
I'm just happy to be here.
Excellent. So we're going to try something different tonight. Some shows have reviewed games after maybe like 2 plays, maybe after 3 plays. Some shows, maybe they review a game without ever playing the game. I'm not going to name any names, but it might happen once in a while. But here at the D6 Generation, we try something new. We're going to try to review a game while we play it in real time. This is the thing we're going to try. So right now, what game are we about to play here, Joe? What are you looking at here?
Looks like Firefly Adventures.
Firefly Adventures. Now, are you familiar with Firefly at all?
Oh, yeah.
So are you excited to try this?
Absolutely.
And what has you excited to try this?
It's got an interesting look to it. It looks like one of those miniature hybrids.
Now, this is from Galeforce 9. Now, Galeforce 9 has done other Firefly games. Have you tried those yet?
Oh, yeah.
And what makes this one look different to you? Just looking at the components on the table here, what's looking a little different?
It does look like it's a hybrid between a board game and a miniature game. The other one is definitely a board game. So,
similar thoughts? What do you think?
yeah, it's very much the hybrid of a miniature with a board game. Actually, I'm really impressed with the money. It's big pieces of paper money, which
No, you gotta buy those separate.
Oh, they're separate.
Here's the real money, right?
Oh, see, so already we got some interesting things happening to the components. So what do you?
It's still nice
No,
money.
the money it comes with is very nice. It's just tiny, like Monopoly-sized money. For like $15, you can get this set of prop money that's the size of the TV show and movie money, and there's a lot of it, and it's beautiful. It's on linen paper, just like real money. You can put it through a dryer over and over again.
How do we know that?
How do we know what?
Did you accidentally set it to the dryer?
No, it's a standard theatrical procedure.
Oh, okay.
Any idiot who ever been in a production would be able to tell you that.
sounds like laundering to me.
It does sound like laundering.
It's indeed laundering.
Literally money laundering. So, Craig, so what we're looking at here today, is this what comes in the box plus you bought the money?
Yes, what you're looking at is there's 20 miniatures. There are 10 3D cardboard, full-color printed buildings that are all built out of, well, there's some tents and there's some cargo containers because we're supposed to be in the Eavesdown docks, which is a very rough and tumble place on Persephone in the Firefly universe. We've got 10 bad guy models, and then we have 10 good guy models. The breakdown is the 5 original crew of Serenity, both in casual poses and then in heroic poses. Because one of the mechanisms of the game is you can switch back and forth between just acting casually, trying not to attract attention, but you're not as powerful, and then switch to your heroic mode, which makes you much more powerful. However, all the bad guys will then come at you.
Craig, how much is the box set?
The box set is $50, and it comes, like I said, these really cool minis. I mean, minis of the Firefly crew are hard to come by, so the fact that you get 2 poses of each of the 5 crew, so you're talking about Zoe, Mal, Wash, Jane, and Kaylee. And so you've got 2 different poses of each model and 2 different color plastics. So if you're not going to paint them, why would you not paint them? But if you're not going to paint them, then you can easily tell at a glance who is each of the characters, whether they're in casual mode, which is gray, or heroic mode, which is green. And then you also have 5 martial art thugs who are close combat bad guys, and you have 5 cowboys or ranged bad guys.
Excellent. I'm going to let you get back to setting up there, Craig.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Seppi now what he thinks about what comes in this box here for $50. What do you think, Seppi? Looking at the models here in front of you, the little buildings.
I'm actually more impressed by Craig's description of these things because I was really confused about what was going on. But now that has opened whole worlds to me.
Has it now? Are you a Firefly fan?
I would say I am an enthusiast, maybe not a fan.
Oh, an enthusiast. Now, where do you think the line goes between enthusiast and fan?
You know, I was very tempted to get the Tidy Bowl man out and dye my hands blue for the occasion, and I feel like that's what a fan would have actually done.
I say. So you're more of an enthusiast just sort of knows that reference, but wouldn't do it to their hands.
Yes, exactly. That is where the line is drawn.
So what do you think? $50, ignoring the extra $15 for the large money there, when it comes in the box, is that a good deal?
I'm still blown away by the money. I was like, holy poop, that money is amazing.
Holy poop. That's what I thought too, really. Holy poop.
Holy poop. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. All right. So Bob, what do you think about the value here? $50 for what you see in here?
Well, it's very well done. The miniatures look top notch, and the 2 poses, it's excellent. The box, the pieces, all very, very nicely done. I'm looking forward to it. I own a copy myself, but I haven't yet played, so I want to see how this works.
Great. So let's check over here now. What do you guys think about the value that comes in this box here? Looking at everything.
For $50, this looks very much like well worth the money. $50.
And would you spend the $15 for the money?
Yes, I would probably bling it on out for $50.
That large money, it's pretty cool. What do you think, Joe?
I don't think I'd buy the money, but the game looks well worth it.
Great. Okay, we're going to take a quick pause here. We're going to jump back in here after a turn or two. Craig's doing setup now. We're going to describe setup in a couple minutes once he's done with that.
Which is not great because
we're going to join Craig explain the rules. Here we go.
That we want is too expensive. Okay, so for instance, a Glucklich GA 642X sniper rifle is going to go $800. But revolvers are only $200, shotguns are $800. Frontier Model B, which is, I believe that's Mal's gun, is $800. Then there's medical kits. So you guys can kind of take a look around. My recommendation is that the people that we have that are decent at fighting should take a gun. Kaylee in particular can use some piece of technical equipment that's going to enhance her ability. She's got 3 wrenches. This is what you've got for skills. Okay, just like the Firefly board game, it breaks down into 3 skills: fighting, tech, and negotiation. Your fighting is taken care of in the fighting mechanic of the game, which means everybody can fight with their hands, and anybody can fight with a gun. If they have a gun, it gives you a shoot ability, but you don't have any bonuses unless you have those on your card. Okay, and then the negotiation is your generic social ability, and anybody can attempt that but you don't get bonuses unless it's on your card or on equipment that you might have. So, for instance, Mal can wear his tight pants. $200. The tight pants actually give him another plus.
I love
Seppi perks right up at that point.
You threw that in my direction.
I think that may be stereotyping. Wash can actually get his Hawaiian shirt for $200, and that gives him another negotiation point.
How much money do we have to spend, Craig?
We have $3,000 for every.
$3,000. So what's happening now is we're looking through a deck of cards that has a bunch of different gear that we can choose to equip with. So we're kind of customizing our character for the adventure right now. So everyone's going through that process, and we'll check back in later in a couple seconds. So, Seppi, I see you've chosen some equipment here. How much money and who are you playing? What did you choose to buy?
I had to be Jane.
Of course you did.
Yeah, absolutely. The man named Jane.
Yeah.
I chose the hat because you cannot be Jane without the hat.
The cunning hat, yeah.
Yeah, the cunning hat, absolutely.
Yep.
And I took a revolver. I felt like the hat is a very team player thing, and giving up $200 to you because you are high maintenance just seemed like what had to happen.
Wow. I am playing Zoe, so I bought a shotgun because it felt like the kind of thing Zoe would walk around with.
Oh, I see.
All right, so what did you get over here?
I'm playing Kaylee, and I got the password generator and the knife. Knife just in case she gets in a tight spot, and the password generator because it allows a reroll on hacking, which I don't know if we'll have any hacking.
I think there'll be a lot of hacking, and Kaylee looks like she's really good at that sort of thing. Joe, what'd you go with?
I went with Wash. He looks like he's got a little bit of everything, not great at any one thing, so I just picked a knife and some counterfeit currency.
Nice. Now, what we didn't mention is this is a co-op game, so we're playing against the table. So Craig is also sort of helping us learn the game, and he's also playing a character. Craig, who are you playing? What'd you pick?
I went last, so I was given Mal, and so is that there's $1,200 left?
He took 6, I took 5. You have 7.
You should have 7.
7 left. So that's not all that's okay. So
No.
7. That's not great. Okay.
Craig is feeling the pinch.
What I'll have yet.
Craig's thinking about it. We'll get back to you on that.
You got to get back to me. Say Badger. Okay.
Craig's coming in to tell us the story we're about to play here.
Okay.
And Craig, what did you choose for equipment?
I chose a cavalry revolver, which I believe is Mal's gun, and tight pants.
Okay. And how did that make you feel, Seppi?
Awkward.
Okay, fair. All right. So what's our story?
So the game comes with 4 brochures.
Yes.
That are that are the missions that include a bunch of information. We're doing questionable objectives because it's sort of the starter mission. So an associate of mine has something what belongs to me. He just ain't got his head around that fact just yet. Once you retrieve what's mine, we can inform him of the rights of the situation. So we are trying to get into a central building, the doors of which are locked. I'll explain how locks work in a minute. We are going to start anywhere on the board outside of the line of sight of any of these cowboys or thugs. Okay? So we have to decide where we want to start. We all start casual, just hanging out. Okay? And we have 40 time segments in which to get in here, and then there's a random roll to see what it is that we're going to find. It's either going to be a safe that we have to drag off while we fight off the thugs. It could be a setup, in which case this becomes it all goes sideways, but there's a Firefly term for it, and I can't remember. Right. In which case we're just going to shoot our way out and hope for the best, and the body count of thugs is in our favor. It could be a person that's in there that's being held captive, and we need to help them get off the board. Or it could be something that's so important we don't even want Badger to get it, so we're trying to double-cross him and get off the board without any of the punks knowing about it, the thugs. So that's going to be random. The time stream that we've got here has 10 segments on each length, and at the end of it, on the 10 spot, is a star. In every scenario, the star does something different. In the starter scenario, there's an event chart. So the starter mission's got a lot of replayability because it's all random. So this could be bad guy reinforcements come in. It could be there's a minor power outage in the Eavesdown Docks area where we are. And it's going to be something that affects the mission as we go forward. The key is there are 2 terminals in outbuildings. If we get into those terminals and we do a successful hack, that will give us intel counters. Intel counters can then be used to adjust the roll in the middle. Okay,
that seems important.
So yeah, because that if it's only a trap on a 1, and the money that we're going to be making on a trap is very minimal. And the way that we want to win the game is the measure of success on the back gives you ratings. Like if we make $0 to $100, might as well crawl away like an itty bitty bug, barely enough to rub together to the fuel. I don't know. I can't do Jane. Okay, it goes all the way up to 4,500 or more, and 4,500 or more, we've could have gone a mite smoother, but ain't nothing to be ashamed of. That's the best you can do. Oh no, big score, 4,500 and above. So that's what we're trying to do. So what we have to do now, after we turn off the recorder, is decide where we all want to be. And
all
we'll
right.
be back in a little bit.
Here we go.
What they are, but they're
Craig's explaining skill tests now, how to get through locks.
You get an idea of how many there are. There's this whole bag is locks.
Full of
On one
locks.
side, it's the lock with a question mark. We don't know what it is. On the other side is what's going on. It could be a green token that means it's not locked. And just standing on that spot is enough to reveal it. You don't have to spend an action to do that.
Not all the doors start locked.
Not all of them start locked, but generally in this mission, if they're not locked, there's a thug on the other side.
Whoa.
Okay?
Safety tip.
Yeah. And so if you flip it and it's got a skill test, that what it's going to tell you is which skill you have to use. Sometimes it's a fight, meaning you have to break the lock. Quite often it's a wrench, meaning you're going to have to jimmy the lock somehow. And that's a test that you're going to have to take. The tests are the symbol of what kind it is, how many dice you get to roll, and the target number. So a 6 is average for these tests, which means they're not easy unless you're the right person for the job. So if it's a wrench and Kaylee's doing it, she's now got a +4 on her die roll to open a lock, which is really good.
So she rolls 1 die. She's looking for a 6 in most cases.
Yep.
And she adds the number of wrench symbols that match the test.
Exactly.
And so if she gets 6 or higher, she does it.
Exactly. That will sound very familiar to fans of the Firefly board game because it's the exact same mechanic.
Right.
Okay. There are like I said, some of them are other kinds of tests. There may be some that are negotiation tests. Maybe you have to fake an identification or something to get through. But for the most part, they're physical locks that need a wrench. The wrenches that we have, Wash has 1, and Zoe has 4 currently because of her equipment, and the rest of us have none.
Right.
So Wash is okay, Kaylee's amazing, the rest of us are like what end of the key goes into the lock. Yeah, so one other thing that's unique to this mission, we can interact with these guys if we are in casual mode, which means that we take one of these negotiation cards, and a negotiation card has 2 options on it, and we have to choose one. We get whatever the card says as a reward if we pass, plus we get to move the thug 2 spaces. Otherwise, if it fails, it'll tell you what happens if you fail. For instance, this one is, and it's an action. So I haven't described actions yet, but that's how many time segments the action takes. Oh. So for 3 time segments, it's a 7 difficulty persuasion, or for 3 time segments, it's a 6 difficulty hacking. And what you're doing is you're pretending you're a stranger around these parts. Just got into town, you're persuading, or I'm here from Osiris Academy. Now, the trouble is, anytime you see this green and yellow stripe with a star in the background, that means you become heroic when you do that. The problem with that is, if you are heroic, you immediately gain the attention of all the bad guys that can see you, and they're going to start shooting you, chasing you down, and hitting you because you don't belong here.
So you'll notice all the guns have that symbol. So as soon as you start shooting your guns, you're making a lot of noise. And you're all of a sudden...
Not all the guns, but I don't think anybody
most of them do.
Holdout pistol.
I almost did, but I did not.
There's a holdout pistol that allows you to shoot and not become heroic if the person you shoot dies. The problem is when you shoot anybody or attack them in any way, you're only doing 1 wound. And most of the bad guys have 2 wounds.
Unless you're Zoe.
Unless you're Zoe. Zoe
with a shotgun.
has a special ability where she can actually fire from cover, which means she's firing from around a corner. And as long as no one can see her, she remains casual. Everybody else is going to become heroic if they shoot.
Also, all the cards are double-sided. You'll notice one side is the casual side and one side is the heroic side.
The player mat.
Make sure your mat is on the casual side at this time.
Yes.
And you'll see your actions change when your options change from heroic to casual.
Yep. So, and one other thing, because you can see how almost all the doors are being guarded, right? So let's talk goals. The computer terminals, we've already discussed what we get out of those. There are crates in building 1 and building 4, and they did a really cool job with graphic design of labeling the buildings. Some of them look like they've been, like, the doors are labeled. Some of them look like they've been stenciled as the part of the fact that it's a freight container. So building 1 and building 4 each have one of these, it's in here somewhere. It's a crate. The game comes with crate tokens. I have used some Mantic models that I came up with, and I put the bottom, on the bottom, you lift it up, it's going to tell us what's in it. It's either some amount of money in the thousands, or it is a piece of equipment. It's random, so we don't know. So that's all that's in this building and that building. Terminals in this building and that building. This is the building that contains our goal, whatever it is that we're looking for. All right?
All right.
So
let's set up.
Now we got to decide where
we want to move them.
So quick update now. We've started playing. All the players are on the board. And one of the interesting mechanics of the game is that there is a time track on the outer edge of the board. And each player is choosing actions to go ahead and do. And when they choose an action, they are spending time, and they're moving their track up on the left-hand side. Sort of similar to Dragon and Flagon or Red November. And then how much time you're going to spend is going to dictate when you're going to get to move next. When you do certain actions that make yourself what they call heroic, so the bad guys suspect you of being a bad guy, they'll start doing things, and that'll put their tokens on the track also, and we'll have to activate the bad guys as well. So what do you think, Joe, so far about this mechanic?
I like it. You're going to have to be real careful about doing too much too quickly. Because you can
overspend, exactly.
And you don't get to go again for a little while until everyone else has had something else to do.
All right, we'll come back in a second here after more time's passed. So Craig's playing Mal, and he's done a brilliant maneuver now and really put us in a very strong place. Seppi, what is your opinion of Craig's latest shenanigans?
That was my hat.
So Jane has his one-use hat that he can give a reroll. Mal tried to knock out a guard near a door. Did not roll well. Seppi tried to lend his hat for a reroll. Also did not roll well. And now Mal has gone heroic. All the bad guys have spotted him. And it's looks like he's got a... What has he got? Who's about to attack Mal over there? Can you tell?
There appears to be a martial artist, a grizzled gunman, sharpshooter, and a bodyguard. All able to see him and ready to...
Yeah, it's looking bad for Mal. And worst of all, Jane has lost his mother's hat. Not too good right now. We have now, at this point, Mal, who is badly injured, bloodied, and somehow has Jane's burnt hat, has crawled into the central building, and we've discovered what, Craig?
Well, here's the deal. I was trying to get into the building, found out that it was unlocked, but then I was next to a thug, so I tried to talk my way past and failed miserably, and everyone in the courtyard started shooting at me, immediately putting me down into the dust. While they were ignoring me, I crawled into the building.
And the first casualty was my hat.
It was.
Let's not forget Jane's hat. A moment of silence for Jane's hat. I wish the recorder had been on for half the grief Seppi has been giving me about the hat. So while I was crawling my way towards the building, thankfully, Kaylee hacked into a terminal twice to give us a little more intel on what's inside, which allowed us to shift the die roll for whatever the objective was in the center twice. And what happened was we rolled a person, and we discovered that if we decided to go for the really expensive bonus that was the top of the chart, all the bad guys were going to immediately start gunning for us, which oddly enough I just realized with Russ's strategy that he just announced, they're going to do that anyway.
Yeah, but more bad guys would come. This way they won't.
True, that's true. Okay, so it's a person. The object is a respected scientist on the run after having committed some serious corporate espionage. Replace the objective token with an unused goon, or in this case, a really cool scientist Reaper Bones mini that I happen to have.
Very nice.
All right. Mark the goon's card with the objective token and add that goon's time marker to the timeline. Take their actions when it is their turn. The scientist has as many wounds as the goon card, so he's got 2 wounds.
That's something.
Because he's a roper. Goons treat the scientist as a heroic crew. Crew within 5 squares of the scientist must act heroic. If the scientist moves off the map before time runs out, the job is successful. If successful, get paid $3,500.
So we got to get them off the table. That's pretty much the plan. Joe, how you feeling about this right now?
I like everyone's chances except for Mal.
Yeah, Mal is still bleeding out in the middle of the table, so we'll see what happens next.
Take another 3 action.
Do a job, get paid. Looks like we've actually had victory.
We did indeed.
Our person has escaped the board. I want to ask everyone quickly what you thought of the game, and how did you feel about the dramatic ending that involved Seppi and a hat? So I'm going to start with Seppi first here. Seppi, what did you feel about the ending of the game there?
You know, I feel like we managed to make it happen despite Craig.
So how did you feel about the game overall? Was it interesting? Was it fun? Would you play it again?
First of all games are about who you play with, and I want to thank everybody for inviting me to this. It was super fun. Next, I love some of the crazy mechanics in it. I was really surprised how much sort of like interplay and depth in this, like you cannot move people in and creating this critical moment for getting away. That's great.
Excellent. So, Bob, what'd you think? You watched? What'd you think of the game?
I want to try it now. This looks like a lot of fun. There's a lot more to it than I thought there'd be, so I want to try it.
Excellent. Great. Well, thanks for trying it, Bob, or watching us anyway. What did you think?
I thought it was great. It had all the feel of the show and those little tense moments of a battle and trying to have the plan work and the plan going pear-shaped.
It did go pear-shaped. Joe, what did you think? What any mechanics appeal to you, or what did your favorite part of the game?
Favorite part of the game? I like that you each kind of specialize in something different. Now, the thing where it can go wrong is you never know if you're in the right position for it because you random tiles and things like that. So you can kind of get stuck a little bit.
Cool, and I enjoyed it as well. I thought it was really great. I liked the different characters. I really like the time mechanic on the corners. I think that's really slick. And I think the innovative part, because we've seen the time in other games, but I think the really innovative part is the hero and act casual. Really fits the theme, and this idea that you can go club a guy and then go swish it away around the corner, I think is really pretty fluffy. Craig, what'd you think?
Yeah, this is my third play, and I enjoy it a lot. I think my favorite part of the game is the casual and heroic mechanic. Because I think it's your character changes whether they're heroic or casual. You get more abilities. I spent half this game downed, so I lose all those abilities, but I was very happy to see everybody else was able to use them. And I think it's a neat, because it's co-op, I think it creates a neat a game experience where we're all working together, and it's frustrating when somebody burns your hat and it doesn't, and nothing comes of it. I think like Joe...
You own it.
I think, as Joe said, like things go wrong, and then you have to adapt and adjust. There's enough randomness with the different tokens and what the locks are going to require, or what the different tests are going to require, that you don't know exactly who's going to need to be where. You have an idea, like you want to have Kaylee near the computer terminals, especially if she's got some equipment to help her hack and things like that. But then it's hilarious when Jane comes up against a lock that requires a massive persuasion test, and he just decides to ignore it, because what else would he do, right? So, I really enjoy it. I still looking at it, and if you look on Twitter, you'll see the pictures. I don't like the warping of the boards, I think, is my only complaint.
It does have a lot of warping going on here.
In long pieces, both the map tiles and the time segments seem to be warping. Not terribly, like you can't use them, but it's not as attractive as I think it could be.
Right. I do like the buildings, though, and the models are pretty great.
Yeah, the buildings look great. The models are cool. I can't wait to paint them. And I humbly would suggest that the big money expansion and all of the cool 3D plastic pieces for the terminals and the boxes are really a must.
Indeed. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today and helping us try this game out.
Thanks for having us.
Blast.
Yeah.
So Craig's now about to figure out the total value here that we made.
What I was saying, we were just having a very it's not going to be funny. Now everybody's just going to shut up and nobody's going to talk.
Right.
We were doing a really fun post-mortem about the moments of the game and how we ended up with the money that we had. The last time I played this mission was with your brother and Pete and Reese, and we left with $3,700. I think we're doing a lot better now, because Joe over there is Wash opened a crate and got 1,000 credits, and also somehow talked a goon out of 200 credits and told him to walk.
That's pretty smooth. That's pretty smooth.
That's very smooth.
The exact phrase I think he used to persuade him was, "Hey, baby, you want a date?"
Was that what you used, Joe?
I believe so.
What do you think of my shirt? And so to try to figure out what the mission was, you get into the middle of the building and then you roll a die. So Mal got shot and stabbed into the bloody state that he was in, and then fell backwards through the unlocked door, revealing that it was a scientist. And I was just saying, that's right out of the TV show. Right. I mean, you can easily see Mal being like, "I've got this, no problem," and then all of a sudden he's just getting shot and kicked and beaten, and he falls through a door, and there just happens to be the scientist we're looking for. So that was fun. I think.
So you said your plan is serendipity?
Indeed.
No, it's called serenity.
That was
sitting on that one for a while.
He's been working on that one for an hour.
Yeah. So I mean, that was fun. I think, like, Zoe, what did you do at the end that was like totally Zoe?
Oh, I had to shoot the guys to clear a path for the scientists to get out.
She ran out there and then became heroic, right? And cleared the path. Jane, I don't know. Jane was, he was still pissed off about his hat.
Yep.
So he was running around dancing and then pushed this guy backwards. So he was doing all kinds of bullying over in the corner, manipulating the bad guys, and then in the end was too close to Kaylee because of the rules of this specific mission, that when you get too close to each other, then you're suspicious, so you become heroic. So he became heroic and was the target, or would have been if they had got another activation, right? What about Kaylee?
Yeah, Kaylee ended up going on through, did the hacking, and sort of pushed some people on out, influenced them to leave the building early on.
Right. Kaylee has a cool ability that she can influence thugs or not thugs, but the bad guys, either thugs or cowboys, to move kind of by, I don't know, flirting with them, or I don't know what the fluff would be. So she literally forced a guy out of the building that he was guarding with the terminal, and then went in and successfully hacked the terminal twice. So she had awesome Kaylee moments. And what about Wash?
Wash was very interesting. He doesn't do much well, so that's why he's sitting there wounded with a...
Hey, he did get $1,200.
He did, but it was...
Not
an interesting way for him to do it.
Yeah. And Jane, did Jane feel like Jane?
Yeah, I was slow. I didn't realize how bad being slow was. But
it was weird because you kept triggering the special events because you were so slow. Everything you did took more time.
Yeah, you guys don't want to put me in a position where I have to roll dice.
No, we did learn that.
It gave me a lot of time to think about wordplay.
Which is, I don't know if that is Jane or not. He had some of the best lines in the series, though.
He did, but he just kind of they fell trippingly off the tongue, so to speak.
Right, well, speaking of that, thanks again, guys, and it's time for bed, so I'll be in my bunk.
0, carry the 0. And yes, that was the Firefly playthrough that we did, and you got to hear all the fun and excitement of Seppi getting his hat burned and just making me pay for it, which continued all weekend long.
It was well deserved.
It was well deserved. I should never take somebody else's hat and burn it for a reroll, because that's never going to work out for me. So longtime listeners will know that I've been waiting for this game since we saw it at Gen Con, and it's been a frustrating wait because there hasn't been a lot of communication. It was, this is going to come out in October, November, December. Okay, maybe January. All right, maybe February for sure. Okay, March. And finally it came out in March. So I was very excited. I had all the terrain already set up, ready to go. And it has so far really lived up to my expectations. So I was very excited about the way the board work looks. It comes with 10 different, corrugated steel looking container buildings or tents. And so those get put down as different 3D buildings. The only concern I have component wise is the tiles bow out. They remind me very much of those Kickstarter tiles from what game, Russ? I always forget.
Sedition Wars,
which of course was the main reason that Sedition Wars, I think, rose up and then died almost immediately because everybody's tiles across the planet were bending. And there are games that have solved this problem. There are plenty of games out there with these flat tiles that stay flat. So I'm a little bordering on a lot disappointed in the quality of the tiles themselves. But that aside, I think it's a great game. It was a lot of fun. The models look great. The fact that you get 2 models for each of the big damn heroes is awesome. You get 5 bad guy thug close combat guys, 5 bad guy ranged weapon cowboy guys. Each one of them is a different sculpt. Each one of those sculpts has its own stats and its own AI. So I think that adds a lot of really cool replayability to the game as well. One fear that I do have is the game itself out of the box only has 4 missions. And so I'm not sure about the replayability when you've only got 4 missions, and the rule book almost seems to push that idea, like, hey, and once you've done it, do it again and see if you can beat your score, which
right.
kind of a lame direction to go. And it's odd because I feel like you could come up with a billion different missions, and they do claim that they're going to have a bunch on their website, although I just looked and they don't have any on their website right now. The way package the mission is in this whole, it's like a brochure. It's a multicolored brochure that's got 4 different pages to it, the way it's folded, and it includes tables and dice rolls and all kinds of other stuff. So it's very much a story driven game. The out of the box sort of introductory mission, it does, I think, probably have a lot of replayability because it starts, the bad guys it's always the same map. The bad guys always start in the same place and they always react the same way. But it's up to you where the big damn heroes go down, and they've got some extra restrictions to them because they're trying to act casual, and it's at a slow point in the day, so there's not a crowd, so they can't really get close to each other, or that looks suspicious to the thugs. And there are random events that occur as the timeline gets advanced, and sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be bad. And then once you get into the central building, you're going to roll a die, and that's going to dictate one of 4 different outcomes for what's actually the object of your heist. And there's different ways that you can adjust that die roll by doing other things in the mission. And the first time we played, none of that was working out for us. And then Reese randomly rolled a power outage, and that unlocks the central door of the central building. And then we happened to roll a really good mission roll that allowed us to escape because it was a person who wanted our help escaping. And then when we played at Adepticon, it was much better. Kaylee had a really easy time getting into one of the terminals. She hacked into that terminal twice, which meant that we had more information that we could adjust that die roll. So we adjusted it again to the person because that's the easiest way to get off the board. And at the same time, Wash was up there opening some crates, so we got some more money out of that. So we had a really successful night, and it didn't feel like it at all outstayed its welcome. It's sort of like the action was going pretty much nonstop is how I felt. What did you feel, Russ?
Yeah, I felt the same way. I felt the action was smooth. I felt it didn't outstay its welcome. What would you rate it before I give my thoughts?
Oh, yes. Well, I was just, I would rate it. I would rate it a 4+ with a reroll, unless you're a Firefly fan, in which case I would give it a 2+.
Ooh, nice. Okay.
I think it really does a great job of capturing the flavor of the show.
Yeah, well, I love the components. So I love the miniatures. I love the fact that you get 2 of each person. Yeah. You get the casual version and the heroic. I think that's fantastic because you can't have too many Janes or Mals or Zoes or Washes. Yeah. I also love that the box becomes the buildings and how it comes with all the terrain you need to play. So it's fully a 3D game. It's not like a bunch of plastic models on a flat board. It's a bunch of plastic models running around cargo crates. It looks perfect. Feels like Firefly. From a mechanics point of view, the casual versus heroic concept, I think, is a perfect fit for Firefly. And it allows the really non-combat characters to really shine in certain ways. You know, Wash can do things that attract attention, but then he can immediately talk his way out of it.
Yep.
Very reliably. Whereas once Mal gets some trouble going, he's usually going to stick it out for a while. Similar with Jane. So I really like that mechanic. That was brilliant. I also, the time increments we talked about when we were playing the game here, sort of, it's very reminiscent of Red November, and other games have used this mechanic as well, such as Dragon and Flagon. So it's becoming a more well-known mechanic, but I liked it. It works really well here, and it's especially effective with AI. Yeah. I really like how the AI's when the AI is going to act is semi unpredictable. And now you have to kind of think about how long do you have. It gives that feeling of like, I only have a limited couple of seconds before the guy's going to come around the corner and spot me, which I really liked a lot. And the characters really nail their role. So it really feels like, that moment when Zoe shot the guy and made it a clear run for the guy we were trying to let escape, just felt perfectly Zoe, right? Mal getting into trouble and getting wounded and kind of getting out alive, but in a very sort of bumbly sort of way is very Mal. Jane just coming around the corner. Everything was perfect. Kaylee did her thing right. They just felt like themselves. It wasn't like trying to square peg, round hole, make everybody shoot guns. They all do different things. I really like that a lot. My only concern, and the value is insane, $50 for this game.
So, yeah,
no brainer. As a Firefly fan, you need to buy this game just for the amazing value and models. The downside to it is, with you, Craig, replayability. I don't know how, without more missions, I can't imagine. I guess the good news is it's only $50, so you're not spending tons of money. But you got 4 or 5 plays here, and you're going to replay a mission a few times. But unless your play group shifts a lot, or you play it once in a great while to kind of celebrate Firefly or whatever, it's not going to be the kind of game you can bring on over and over again unless you get more missions there. So that's my only, or they come out with a mission designer or something. Right. So that's my only concern.
They're supposed to be on the website. Also, there's 2 expansions that have been announced to get the crew up to their like 9 iconic characters. And each one of those expansions comes with 2, but it also comes with 2 more missions. So with those, you'd have 8 missions total.
So I feel like they're going there. So assuming all that stuff comes out and everything's fine, it might be good. But yeah, I think it's a solid game and I love it. And I'm with you, Craig. I think it's a 4+ straight up for your average gamer, because there are other co-op sort of adventure games. But if you're a Firefly fan, this goes down to 2+. Yeah. If you're a Firefly fan, this is a must own. Go buy it now.
I think so.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire.
Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your total fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakelin and check out everything I'm up to over at NicoleWakelin.com. Our shout out this week is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. So a movie came out at the end of last year that we had all really wanted to see, and it came out during the holidays in December, and that made it kind of difficult to go see it because, as most of you know, the holidays get kind of crazy, especially when you have kids and you got family and there's 20 different directions you're going, and suddenly movies that you were like, yeah, we're going to go see that because that looks kind of fun, you never see. And the movie that I'm talking about is Jumanji. Now, that originally came out many years ago, and it was a lot of fun, and they actually filmed parts of it here in New Hampshire, which made it kind of neat because we knew some people who were like extras in the background. They just stood there and looked shocked as animals run by kind of thing. But still, it was kind of cool, and we knew where it was filmed. So that was sort of neat. So it was a good movie. So when the new one came out, it looked pretty funny. It has The Rock in it. The Rock is kind of cool, and he's always fun to watch. I mean, he's not someone who has this great breadth of acting capability, but he is fun in the roles that he does. And we really wanted to see it. And suddenly realized that it came out in December and we never did go see it. We fixed that problem the other day. Now we've seen Jumanji, and it was absolutely hilarious. Now, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking almost going to a movie that's a remake of or a new twist on or a prequel or a sequel to something that you saw very many years ago, because you can't just make it the same. It's not like if you made a movie 2 years apart and you just make a few changes and you update things and the same people come back. When you have this many years between movies, it's so entirely different that it's the same, but it's not. And they may have made it better, they may have made it just as good, or they may have made it worse. In this case, I thought they made it just as good. They made some fun changes changes to it. And I really enjoyed it. The fact that instead of a board game, I know this is a board game podcast, but instead of a board game, they turned it into a video game was really kind of funny. And the kids got a kick out of it and we got a kick out of it. I love that Amy Pond was one of the characters or the actress who played her was, which took me like 20 minutes of watching. And I'm like, why does she look so familiar? How come I know this? Oh, and it finally registered who she was. And it is a fun story and it's a fun movie. It was a kick to see. Even if you have kids who haven't maybe seen the original, I don't think my kids have. In fact, we might force them to watch it now. I think that could be kind of fun. But it is a cute movie. It was the one that I was sad that I missed when it originally came through theaters. But just sort of reinforcing that sometimes the movies that you miss because they came and they went while life was too busy doesn't mean that they weren't good enough to see. It's a great thing to go back and revisit some of those movies and to not miss out on stuff. And if you haven't seen Jumanji, especially if you saw the first one back in the day, it's a really fun movie to watch.
Hey, and now it's time to talk about our friends at Geek Nation Tours. Always a blast to see the big Geek Nation Tour group at Adepticon, and this year was no exception. Terrace and the crew were there, had a great time. They came out in force to the board game event on Sunday night. They were sharing with us all the amazing adventures they had this time around as well. And the thing about Geek Nation Tours, and we said it before, and I'll say it again here, is that really you are always with people that are your people, right? So one of the best parts of going to, like Gen Con or Adepticon or other conventions is that all of a sudden you're in a giant place that is all your people, right? They're all people who have the same passions you have. They care about what you have. And suddenly everywhere you go, you can have small talk conversations because you're all talking about the same stuff and you're all interested in the same things. What's great about Geek Nation Tours is you get that in a very small scale wherever you go on tour with these guys. So let's say you want to go out and check out Mexico. Let's say you want to go out and check out Japan. Let's say you want to go see all the great Doctor Who sites in England. Let's say you want to go see the historical Civil War sites here in the United States, in the Southern United States. Anywhere you want to go, you can go with Geek Nation Tours and have that wonderful experience of being with your people while you tour these things. It's fantastic. And don't fear you'll miss anything out really geeky and nerdy while you're going with Geek Nation Tours, because Terrace and the crew there does such a great job of really scouting and looking into the great things you can see and do while there, and some of the lesser known but similarly nerdy things you'll want to see and check out. So don't miss all the action. Check out your next vacation destinations by heading on over to Geek Nation Tours and clicking on the Tours link, and you will not be disappointed.
You're listening to the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what?
Who writes these?
Hey, welcome back. And now we're getting ready to try this whole review while we play it thing again. Right, Craig?
Yeah, why should we wait and see if the first one was successful before doing a second one instead of just jumping in and doing two in one show before we get any feedback? That sounds good to me.
Exactly right. So we're here live at Adepticon again, playing this. Matt was kind enough to help us get a little table over here in the hobby area, so we're going to try to be a little quiet and not disturb all the painters. So thank you, Matt.
You're very welcome.
Now, Matt, your staff here at Adepticon, right?
I am.
You're part of the team that makes it all happen?
I really am, yes.
What is your primary responsibility here?
I actually help just about everywhere, from judging to hobby seminars to sponsorship, you name it.
Everybody says the same thing at Adepticon as staff. I do a little bit of everything here.
It's true. We have an absolutely fantastic staff of volunteers. People do whatever is needed to get done at that point.
Great, excellent. We also have Nate playing with us today. Hi, Nate. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Great. Now, Nate, what kind of games do you typically play?
Yes, all of them.
So you're here at Adepticon, so you must be a miniature gamer.
A little bit. I'm a bit of a magpie. I'll do a little bit of everything.
Great. So what do you like about Adepticon most?
I like the inclusiveness. I like. I spend a lot of time out here in the hobby lounge. I like to paint. I like to take classes, and I like that it offers a little bit of everything for every type of gamer.
Awesome. Now we're about to play Giant Killer Robots, Heavy Hitters. You backed and have this Kickstarter.
Yes, I did. I arrived about a month ago or so.
Any regrets so far?
Not at all.
All right, so we're going to learn more in a minute. Now we also have Jonathan here with us. How you doing, Jonathan?
Any better, we'd be related.
Excellent. Now, Jonathan, this is your first Adepticon. What drew you out here?
That guy Nathan right over there. He has tried to get me to come to Adepticon for 3 years. I finally said I'm going, and I've had a blast getting to meet all the people that he tells great stories about and seeing how warm and friendly everybody's been here. Like, this has been a phenomenally good time.
Awesome. Now, you've been a miniature gamer for many years. Are you just getting sucked in now, or what's happening?
I'm slowly taking part of the plastic crack, and so like my shelving at my home is filling up and filling up and filling up, and so yeah, I don't do a lot of miniature gaming yet, but it's gradually going to take over my life. I can feel it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks all for helping us out with the episode here today and playing this game with us. So this is, in fact, Giant Killer Robots by WETA Workshop and Cryptozoic, right? It just, as Nathan mentioned, it just shipped from Kickstarter. They kickstarted it last year. It's just getting in the hands of people like myself and Nathan who backed it. And so, Jonathan, to kind of set the tone for us, would you give us a dramatic reading of the background here?
Welcome to the biggest sport of the future. Giant Killer Robots Heavy Hitters is an advertising-driven televised combat sport where mega corporations fight for lucrative salvage rights and advertising dominance in Earth's abandoned cities. Signed on for the season, your skills as a pilot and tactician are needed to win, gaining your corporation faction more fans, more importantly, loyal consumers. You'll be piloting a Heavy Hitter, the nickname given to the largest class fighting mech in the battle zone. Accompanying your Heavy Hitter in these high-stakes support matches are 3 unmanned robotic support units consisting of combat, repair, and recon. You control their movement and actions as you work your way to victory. Any dumb mech jockey can shoot, but can you strat? I guess we're going to find out.
Well done, John. Craig, that was pretty impressive.
That was very impressive.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a pause here. We'll figure out our mech's equipment, and I'm going to come back and ask everybody what they thought about how they decided to get their mechs ready for battle in a moment. So, Craig, the guys are getting ready to set everything up, and it's actually awesome gaming with miniature gamers because I can throw them all these components and they can put them together. Speaking of components, what are they assembling in the middle of the board right now, those buildings? How do those kinds of things
Well, the board itself is a black and white, it's not really black and white. It's actually all in shades of gray hex map, right? And it's double-sided. One side seems to be a little more narrow. It looks almost like an arena. The side we're using looks like a city map. And at first glance, it might look like not much. It might look like it's not really very inspiring, except that the colors match perfectly with the bases of the buildings and the shades of the buildings, which is what the guys are doing right now. They're putting together these buildings. Each building is a 3D plastic base that looks like some of the building may have fallen off, but it's a base for the whole building. And then the top is another 3D plastic, hard plastic capper that gives it a really cool top off and sort of finishes it up and has little slots on it for these little tags. And then when you take the cardboard building parts off, the base of it is actually inside the building is more rubble, so it looks like the building collapsed, which is great. So the guys are putting together the buildings, and then the mission that we've chosen says specifically what hexes the buildings go in, and each hex is, or not all of them, it looks like. Looks like some of them in a pattern, almost like a grid, are labeled with coordinates, but it's in such a subtle a gray also, just slightly darker, that it does not impinge on the overall impact. And then to kind of wrap it all together from a graphic design point of view, the bases of all of the different giant robots match that color gray also. So really, although the board itself is kind of like, oh, okay, kind of a street, once you put it all together, it really complements the whole game.
Right, because what you end up with is these sort of tall, narrow skyscrapers, fully rendered in 3D with the plastic bases Craig described, the plastic caps, and these cardboard buildings.
Really beautifully color printed.
And they're all beautiful color printed. They all look like they're damaged because the background here is we're wiping out the buildings, as you heard, Red, to clear way for new construction. But what's also really cool is they're varying heights, so it gives a little bit of variety to the
there's 3 different heights, so it looks like a really cool city.
So they're setting up the map, but now also what's been happening is we're setting up each of our player stations. And what's really pretty cool about the Kickstarter level I backed is that there's these really neat sort of plastic tray, sort of command consoles for each player to control everything. So, Craig, what does your console look like right now? What do you got going on over there?
Well, the console that I have, because I've played before, I have already chosen my equipment that we'll talk about soon. And so I have a deck of cards in my... and it's got a cool like power button kind of icon in that part of the tray, and that's like my standby. Those are the things that that's my draw deck basically. And then I have an empty tray that is my my discard, which they will be active again. Those cards will be shuffled back into my deck so I can recycle those again. But then there's a really cool tray that's kind of like sideways to the other two. So it's horizontal where they're vertical. And there's like some bullet holes and some cracked concrete. And that's where your destroyed cards go when that's how you're going to track damage, right? You have a deck of 25 cards, and those are all your activation options as far as your weapons and some other cool stuff that you can do, and deploying your little mini mechs. And whenever you take damage, your option is either to take them out of your hand. You're going to lose cards, right? So if you take 3 damage, you're going to lose 3 cards. You can take them out of your hand if you've got some cards in your hand you don't want, or you can blind draw from your active deck, your draw deck. And so right now I just have that active deck, and then I have these 2 spaces, one where cards will go when they're used but to be recycled, and then one where they go when they're damaged.
Yep. And a couple of the pieces of bling that I really like in the sort of Kickstarter version of this, in the base game, if you were to buy it directly from the WETA webpage, you'd get a nice, heavy, thick cardboard card that does everything Craig just described, but not quite as cool because it's not 3D, it doesn't have a depth to it. The other cool thing is, on the right-hand side, there's a little track that you lock in a little red energy slider. That's a little plastic lightning bolt.
Yep.
And that goes up and down. That's a core mechanic of the game, too. And you hear guys talk about this because everything you do requires this energy. It does recharge every turn back to 5, but if that energy goes below 0, you can do that, but your mech takes a point of damage for every point below
so you're
that.
going to lose a card for every point of energy you spend beyond the 5 that you get.
So I like this mechanic a lot because remember, BattleTech has that overheat mechanic where you redline, you get that feeling of damage.
And you're going to do that a lot in the game because you're going to find yourself in a position where you have to move or you're going to get shot, but then you also want to shoot. So
I love
it
that
makes
part.
there's going to be more you want to do than you can do, but there's a mechanic there for you to push it and do it anyway.
And the other completely unnecessary but really cool little thing is along the top of the plastic version, there's a little slot which allows you to stand your cards up. So each player's got a pilot card, which we didn't really talk about, but the pilot card is this individual character. Each player picks at the beginning of the game. Every faction has access to the same pilots, so you get the feeling that these are like almost like free agents that work for different sponsors from battle to battle. But if Craig gets to go first and he picks one particular pilot, no one else has access to that pilot, and they got to pick someone different. Each pilot has a unique ability that is very impactful in the game. My pilot, for example, was +1 movement and +1 range on all the support units. What does your pilot do, Craig?
My pilot allowed me to re-roll 1s in all armor saves. So whenever you take damage, you're going to roll your armor save. Like for the big mechs is 5, for the little mechs is 6, unless you can start to upgrade those. And I got to reroll 1s, which in the end was not very useful, especially when there's one pilot that allows you to deploy for 1 less energy, which if you have a deploy card is only going to cost you 1 instead of 2. But if you're going to deploy without an energy card, you need those little guys, really, because they're going to be the ones that are tagging the buildings, and they're going to be the ones that are spotting for your artillery and all kinds of other. They do a lot of different things in the game. And if you don't have a deploy card, you can still deploy them. It costs double energy, so 4. So if you have that guy, he's only costing you 3 without the card, which is only 1 more than a normal person would have to spend. So there are impacts that there are better choices to make than the one I made.
I think it does depend on playstyle a bit, but yes, Craig was getting usual Craig bad luck, which you would miss, but he'd never roll a 1 when you missed.
Exactly.
And then when he did get to reroll a 1, the few times he did, it missed anyway. So the benefit did definitely not show up for him.
I should always pick the ones that are going to give a concrete, non-luck dependent
You should have got that yellow mech that can spend energy to auto hit. That's what you need.
That's what I needed.
The other thing that's kind of neat, so if you imagine this base station, you got this rectangular sort of plastic base here, the fancy version like I did. You got your stuff in there. You got your pilot card standing up. You can also put cards in there from your hand and other things if you want to do that. On the left-hand side, you're going to have these 3 cardboard, nice square tokens. And each of these on one side is going to have sort of a base core mechanic, like the number you need to roll to hit support units, or the number your support units need to roll to survive a hit, or other different things like that, right? Also next to the main board, we've set up an achievement tracking board. Each of the pilots has their own little icon with a color coding to match the player color. And we put all our pilots along the edge there. And what's going to happen is during the course of the game, if we do certain things like take a really cool shot between two buildings or get someone in the flank or manage to get control of the first player token or manage to get all our little units on the board, you get an achievement and it advances your pilot forward. And at certain points on the achievement tracks, there's iconography to remind you to flip over those little black squares, tokens next to your base. And what that does then is it changes your to hit number gets better or your defensive bonus gets better. So it makes it a little easier. You're leveling up essentially by doing these achievements. Also, those achievements are one of the possible ways to get victory conditions at the end of the game if it's essentially a player elimination or a try for other reasons. So you want to be as high on that achievement track as you can. All right, so now we have got our stuff together. I think our player bases are all set up. We're pretty much ready to start the game. As we set up, we all had to do a couple things. One, get our bits together and kind of analyze what we're going to be playing with. But two, figure out exactly how our heavy hitters are going to be armed. What kind of weapon systems, primary and secondary systems. Matt, what do you think of the components in this game? It is not a cheap game. It's about $150 for everything you see here. What do you think of the components? Does it feel worth it?
Yeah, I really like the components. They're pretty good quality cards, great looking models. They're all pre-painted, obviously. The terrain looks fantastic. No complaints.
And what did you pick for weapon systems today?
What did I pick? I think
You don't have to tell him that.
That's true. They never tell it to everybody.
All right. What thoughts went into your weapon system choices?
I had absolutely no thoughts, not knowing exactly what they did.
Russ kept saying take all missiles.
Fair
so
enough.
I took no missiles.
I took no missiles, yeah.
So Nathan, you've got the game too. How do you like the components, having stared at it for a while?
I really like the components. I think they add a great look and feel to the game. I think the robots are the right size, stomping through the towers in the city.
How tall? They look like they're about 6 inches, 4 inches.
I think about 4, 5, and 6 inches. The building's about 4, 5, 6. Your primary bots are anywhere between about 3 to 5 or 6, and then their little helper bots are usually a couple inches tall. Yeah.
Nice pre-paints, lots of decals all over them.
Yeah, they did a really nice job of doing the pre-paints and washing them actually as well to give a little bit more detail.
And what kind of thoughts went into your weapon systems, or do you also want to be secretive?
I don't mind being telling. I like a lot of pew-pew and a little bit of whoosh as well to go with my bots.
Nice. Craig, what do you think of the components?
I like the components a lot. The quality of the models is great. The heavy hitters are awesome. They've got the logo on the base with some really cool iconography to show where the flanks are. The smaller units are not as fully painted, but they are washed, which makes them look really neat in 3D and all worn. And I'm not telling you what I took for weapons.
Nice. So, Jonathan, you played the game before?
I have, yes.
You have. So what do you think of the components?
As somebody who doesn't necessarily like to paint miniatures, but likes the idea of them, these things are amazing. It's 1,000 times better than anything I could do is just walking into this. So when I look at these, I'm just... the first time I played it, I immediately started trying to find it on eBay, being this is going to be a great game for I can see this playing with my kids. The components are so over the top outstanding that I can't even compare it to another game.
Now, what were your favorite weapons when you played?
With a whole bunch of missiles, and that was it for me. I was I just want to shoot missiles at things. And
there you have it. It's all about the missiles, people. All right, we're going to try this out now a little bit. All right, so we're joining the game in progress. Matt's moving his flyer for the first time. Matt appears to be in a tactical conundrum. Matt, what kind of things are going through your head right now?
Well, I'm not really happy with the idea of losing my flyer so early in the game. I have a feeling that it will be targeted and blown out of the air. So I'm going to skulk a little bit and hide behind some buildings. But I also want to be able to tag a building.
It's a tough choice. So just a bit about tagging buildings here. So in this game, there are two objectives. One of them is you can try to destroy the other heavy hitters. They're big mechs for the win. The other option, and the more common option, is to try to tear down and get the sponsorship to destroy 4 buildings. And the way you do that is to end the turn with your model and or your support units adjacent to one of the buildings. So the tough decision Matt is facing right now is, does he try to end to optimize tagging, or does he move into a position where maybe he can use his spotting of his flyer for some indirect missile fire from his heavy hitter? All right, so now we're entering the combat phase, and this is probably the most interesting mechanics of the game. So what's going to happen now is the players are going to lock in one or more cards from weapon choices from their hand face down in front of themselves. Also, though, as you start to make this arrangement of cards that's going to indicate the weapons you're going to fire, go ahead and take a look at the little cards of the support units that you currently have on the table and bring them out in front of you as well, because they will also be able to attack. So, for example, I have the scanner flying out here. My support unit's like a little jetpack dude. So I'm going to put him up here. And now I'm going to look through my hands. Each player can play one and only one of each different weapon system in their hand if they want. But keep in mind, pay attention to the energy cost of these weapons, because if you choose to play that weapon, you're going to pay the energy cost regardless of anything else that happens after we start figuring out what happens. So the interesting thing about this now is players are going to lock in their weapons and make those decisions before they know the order of fire, because each weapon has a little series of 3 digits in the upper left-hand corner that indicates essentially the initiative speed of the weapon. Higher is better, right? So we're going to come down from high numbers to low numbers, and people who have very, very high numbers, their weapons are going to fire first. So we don't really know whether players are going to play yet, and we're going to find out now what kind of battle is going to happen. So what we wanted to talk a little bit about here is we're about, I don't think we're quite the mid-game. Would you say we're in the mid-game, Nathan, or about so early?
Close to it. I'm not sure on the damage side of things, but we are getting close enough that I think weapons are going to start firing very fast and furiously.
All Russ has to do is destroy 3 more buildings to win, and he's about to destroy another one. So
that's what she's
very quickly about to be halfway.
And that's also a Craig Jedi mind trick to tell everybody to shoot Russ. But they've already decided to do that, so it's fine. So what's happening now is one mechanic we haven't really talked about yet, other than attacking, is this idea of the sponsor cards.
Yes.
Now, these sponsor cards you get, as you tag buildings, you will get sponsor cards, which are basically the idea, kind of like in Hunger Games, the little things get floating out of the sky for you. That's what's happening here. Sponsors are paying extra money to give you to support you. Matt has an interesting card he's getting me to look at. What's going through your mind right now, Matt, in the sponsorship?
Well, I'm about to play something which is going to make some people unhappy.
So what's the fluff on this card? What's happening here?
So basically what this is, the pink elephant.
Ooh, a pink elephant. That seems interesting. What are you going to do with your pink elephant?
It's called a pushy elephant. It says move any opponent, your main unit, of course,
sure,
into an empty adjacent hex maintaining its current facing. There's no way to avoid the pink stampede.
So the image here is a giant pink elephant is about to push a heavy hitter. I assume you're choosing me,
unfortunately,
because Craig just used his Jedi mind trick on you.
No, actually, this has been planned for last turn.
Darn it.
Yes.
Okay. So where are you going to move my giant orange mech?
Gentlemen, where would you like it? Perhaps maybe...
Oh, apparently the disable's deciding now. Oh! So now, what you're not seeing is visual cues. Visual cues.
I mean, I don't need
it's good for you, too.
No, it's not. It gives me cover. It gives me cover.
It's going to get covered from one guy or the other, so it doesn't matter. Which one do you want, guys?
All right.
Well, I'm going to do more damage if he's not in cover for me.
Okay. And this allows you to at least attack him, though, right?
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
So you're seeing a lot of great player interaction happening here.
Yeah, I was going to say.
What do you think should happen here, Jonathan?
Look, I'm the Euro player here.
How screwed am I right now?
I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, we're definitely at an 11. It's not going to go well.
Not going well.
You got your repair bot out.
That's right. That's what I'm thinking.
All right, the pink elephant has been played here.
And he has jammed me between 2 buildings in a bad shot. So we'll see what happens later. All right, what you have not seen now is literally before any gunfire has occurred, Matt's played a corporate sponsor card to jam me between 2 buildings. Then Craig immediately played a card to allow him to fire the same weapon twice in a turn. And now Matt has played another card which has pretty much disabled all my support units who can't attack. So it is now a bit of a mess.
Within my minimum.
The only bright spot here is it appears that I am now jammed too close to Craig.
Would you like to shoot somebody else?
Yes, you will. Not me. All right. Well, we're going to go back to battling here. We'll let you know what happens in a minute.
So it's going to go strike.
So what's really interesting about this game is what you can pull off with really good hand management, some interesting combos. So as I mentioned earlier, Matt played a pink elephant, shoving me into a bad spot. Craig got some great shots on my back, but then Nate had set up a really cool move. Nate, what did you just do to my poor heavy hitter?
My guy has a weapon. His primary weapon is called Quilled Strike. It's an energy weapon that if I cause 3 damage, I can basically shoot it again.
For free.
Only if the card's yes, but only if he's got another card of the same type in his hand, so he has to have stacked his hand for this move to happen.
Right, I had 3 of them in my hand, so I fired 1, hit, did 5 damage. Immediately got to play another one from my hand for free, fired again, did 3 damage, immediately got to play the third one for a total of, 11 damage total.
And then Craig, you just hit me for how much?
I think I hit you for 3 or 4.
Right. So I'm at like 16 damage for the turn, something like that. Now, so everybody knows you start the game with 25 cards, and when all your cards are gone, your heavy hit is destroyed, and you are out. So they just took me down to well below, what am I down to, a quarter of my starting cards? So pretty brutal stuff.
60%.
Yeah, pretty bad. So we'll see what happens here, but it's not looking good for Team Orange, even though we were momentarily ahead for a brief glimmer of hope. glorious moment for Nathan there, but it's just been rolled back. Nathan, what happened there?
We all forgot that Craig, prior to the match, fed me some bad tacos, and so I actually that round
was less accurate than he should have been because he's been shooting at me all game.
Right, so he targeted me with the bad tacos, which would have given me a +2 to hit.
And harder.
Right, and I needed 7s instead of 5s, and the second time I used that card, I actually did roll a 5, exactly what I needed if I hadn't had bad tacos.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Montezuma's revenge strikes.
So bad tacos have done. I still took a pretty brutal round, but not as bad as it initially looked.
As bad as it should.
But it really was cool because we saw some of the potential of the game, but we also saw how bad those tacos can really be.
And now you know those 2 cards are in his hand as well.
And we also know to John's point, we know what's in his hand. All right, so we're getting near the very end game here. I was dangerously close to being able to win by grabbing a couple set of buildings. I missed the move A, thanks to Jonathan being fair-minded, even though he spotted it. So what did you see with me earlier, John?
So there was a move where you could have gone for victory, and it has elusively slipped out of your grasp now. The situation is not... It's
spiraling out of control.
Yeah, it's no longer optimal.
I am in a non-optimal spot because despite not going for it perfectly, everybody shot my little guys, and I'm no longer in a position to win immediately. Now, then what was spotted was Matt was looking at an opportunity. He was trying to decide to shoot me or shoot Nate. And what were you thinking there, Matt?
Well, I honestly did not know how to win the game, so I thought you had to kill everyone on the board. Right. And then it was suggested maybe I should learn how to play the game. And it realized that if I kill Nate, that the game will end and I am in the lead and will win. So I have decided to shoot my Thunderstrike at Nate.
So Jonathan was pointing out that and there's 2 ways to end the game. One, knock 4 buildings down, and whoever does that wins. But the second way is as soon as one of the players' mechs is eliminated, their heavy hitters eliminated, the game ends immediately, and then it goes to victory points, and those are determined based on how many cards are left in your deck, so your health, plus how many times you've advanced on the achievement track, and the achievement track advances every time you do something cool, like getting all 3 of your support units out, or taking out a building, or getting a nice alley shot, or something similar. So Matt has realized, thanks to Jonathan's tip there, that he's in the position probably in the lead right now with points, so he wants the game to end as soon as possible, and he's also realized that Nate, how you feel about this, Nate?
Well, with 4 hit points left and 7 damage incoming, I'm not feeling so great.
So Matt has rolled. He is hit, and it is a massive hit. It's a heavy hit, if you will, for 7 points. And so now, Nate, we're going to go live to Nate as he makes the save. Nate, here it comes.
Jonathan's got a comment.
I am feeling less good about the drive back to Texas that I have to make with Nate. So.
Okay. All right, Nate, so here you go. We're going to hear live Nate's response as he rolls 7 saves. He needs many of these dice to come up with 5s or better. Ooh, it's a terrible roll. Nate takes all 7 saves on a single.
The game.
Oh, and we're down. Hey, and so that was just a fantastic game of Giant Killer Robots heavy hitters. And so what I'd like to do now is jump right in here and share our final thoughts. But first, Craig.
Yes.
In the style of a hyped up corporate sponsor, please describe the patent pending D6G rating system.
Wait a second, I got to drink some Hapsy.
There you go.
Oh, hey, fight fans! It's Wednesday, and we're coming back to you with a big robot killing spree, fantastic awesomeness that is just a stream of consciousness yelling that has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. And so we want you to be able to rate our robots as they fight across these torn, tattered landscapes. So if you really think that monster robot is awesome, I want you to give it a rating. That rating is going to be lower instead of higher, because as you roll a D6, the more numbers above that, that's how many people you think are going to really enjoy that, and you're going to all be fans, and you're going to be dropping like parachutes full of supplies and or giant pink elephants charging across the battlefield. And so a low number is like, yeah, and a high number is like, I don't really care about that too much. So let's go!
Nicely done, sir. Nicely done. So I'll jump in first here. Basically, lower is better for our rating system, as longtime listeners will know. So we did have a great time playing Giant Killer Robots at Adepticon. Also, Craig and I played it mano a mano, as it were. First of all, we should probably say it was published this year via Kickstarter 2018 from WETA Workshop and Cryptozoic Games. It is a $150 game. You can still get it if you go to WETA Workshop's website. You can order it directly from them. It's $150, so keep that in mind. It's not cheap, but the components are off the chart. Think about this game. It comes with 4 of these really large, they're all pre-built, but these really detailed giant robot models that are pre-painted and pre-decaled. So they really look really sharp. And each robot faction has 3 different sculpted, uniquely sculpted, smaller support vehicles, which also look fantastic. So really, I think the value's there. You also get these great buildings made of cardboard and plastic as well. So you heard the players talk about the quality of the components, so I won't belabor that point, but I think it looks really fantastic on the tabletop.
Yep.
It's a fast playing game, and it's a lot of fun, even with 4 players. I mean, we were learning the rules as we played, pausing to record stuff. It still didn't feel long and drawn out in any way to me. And I think I like the fact that it's 4 players. And in fact, I'm so glad we did play at 4 players, Craig, because I enjoyed 2 players, but 4 players is where it's at.
Absolutely. That's where it shines.
It really does. And one thing that was completely unexpected for me, even though I did back to Kickstarter, was the amount of replayability, because you customize your mech before each game. And there's a lot of customizing options there. There's like 4 different primary weapon choices for each mech and a bunch of secondary choices, not to mention just being able to switch your pilots. So there's a lot of game variability here in the core set. And I don't think, they may or may not make expansions, but there's a lot of flexibility here, which I really like as well. Core mechanics of the game, I think they're really innovative. I love the spawning of the little guys near the big mech. I love the building tagging as sort of a primary/secondary objective. I think it really gets people moving to those buildings. And despite the fact that the table was really kind of trying to bear down on killing somebody, everybody was really going for tagging buildings, because not only does it give you the final win if you can knock 4 buildings down, but also you're getting those sponsor cards for every tag. So you really are, and those sponsor cards are super powerful. So you're really rewarded for tagging. So you really are, it's not just like a kind of side objective. You need to be messing with that, which I really liked a lot. I also like that the deck itself of your different actions you can do, right? The deck is your different weapons you can shoot. I love that the deck size is your health of your giant killer robot. And as the deck gets smaller, of course, not only are you like, oh no, I'm about to die, but your options are getting limited. So if your big gun keeps getting damaged, those are the cards that get pulled out. You're going to not fire your main gun as often. If your secondary weapons get pulled out, you're not going to get that as often. If you're not able to call in an airstrike, maybe your antenna got blown off, right? So it's got all of that in there in a very simple, elegant mechanic, which I really, really like. Yeah. And my other favorite thing about it is I love that integrated attack turn. So each player during the attack phase is locking in the various weapon systems they're going to shoot. Then we all flip our cards over and we shoot in the order of the initiative number in the corner of that card. So immediately you're all engaged. You're all looking at the table trying to figure it out. It's not like waiting for Craig to shoot. Craig fires one weapon, and then maybe now it's Matt's turn to fire his weapon, and then it's my turn to fire my weapon. So you're all looking, you're all fully engaged, you're all cheering or booing when someone gets hit hard. It's really no downtime that I felt. So the only thing is the downsides here really are only 2 things. One, $150 is a lot. I think the value's there, but there's no denying $150 is a lot of money for a board game. Yeah. And the second part is I don't think a company like WETA, since gaming isn't their primary deal, I don't know that they're going to do a lot for this game. Yeah. I don't even know that there'll ever be a second printing. I think this may be a one-shot thing. Someone at WETA dreamed of doing a board game once and had a crazy idea, and they just did it. Maybe they'll prove me wrong on this, but I feel like that might happen, and I feel this could become a Grail game. One of our players said it at Adepticon. This is going to be the kind of game a lot of people seek out, because once it's gone, I think it's going to be gone, and I think a lot of people are gonna really be impressed with it when they play it, and they're gonna be like, "How do I get this thing?" So, and I don't know if it'll be supported well. I don't know if they'll be creating more factions or more expansions. I think this is just it. Craig, what are your thoughts? And for a rating, I would give it a 3+ with a reroll. I think.
Okay, straight up. All right. I really enjoyed it. I'm not a huge, big, giant robot guy. I think this game is great. I think the way that it deals with customizing your mech is awesome. There's a lot of depth. Do you want to go with energy weapons or missile weapons or ballistic weapons? And then, of course, you've also got to pick your other cards that are more defensive. Do you want to go with defense against miss? Like if you're playing against Russ, he's going to take a lot of missiles. So you want to have missile defense. So there's a lot of customization, but it's all done with these cards. You're creating your deck of 25 cards. And so it's not that hard to do it, but then it's got a really cool effect in game. And so I thought that was really neat. I do feel I'm a little nervous about getting hand locked, because as we discovered, you can't really discard cards from your hand unless you're getting damaged. You've got five primary weapon cards in there, and then four secondary weapon cards for two different secondary weapon systems.
Yes.
So the majority of your cards are going to be weapons, which is cool. But you've only got five. You don't have to have five, but there are up to five you can take. Deploy cards, which is what you need to deploy those smaller mechs, and you really need those smaller mechs out there if you're playing the deeper game where you're going to be needing to tag those buildings and you need to cover a lot more space. And I only got in the entire game, I only got 2 deploy cards because I took a lot of heavy damage mid game, and I liked my hand, so I was flipping from my deck, which was not a great idea. I think you should kind of like spread out the damage a little bit, because I lost all of my deploy card, or my 3 of my 5 deploy cards in that damage thing. So I wish there was some mechanism where you could I know they don't want you to churn through your deck, but at the same, because you're probably going to be looking for your orbital bombardment and things like that. But at the same time, I wish there was a way that maybe 1 or 2 cards could be recycled as you go. Other than that, that was the only time I wanted to do something that I couldn't because of the mechanics of the game. Otherwise, it's just what you want to do. You know what you want to do. The objectives are very clear, and how that translates into gameplay is very clear as well. I really enjoyed it. I think the models look they're exceptional. The big giant killer robots are amazing. They don't need any touch-ups at all. The smaller support robots they're the same color as the primary color of your faction, but then they've been inked, so even they look really cool, but you could touch them up a little bit and make them look even cooler, kind of bring them into a par with the giant robots. But right out of the box, they look great. I love the advancement mechanic where there's 4 different things you can do that would push your character up. So you've got a feeling of advancing over the course of the game. And I love, love, love the whole concept of the corporate sponsorship. I think it's hilarious. It adds a whole new comic character to the game. Really enjoy it. I think there's a lot of different things that would add to replayability between the different weapon systems that each robot can have. The draw of like every game is going to be different because you're going to have different cards in your hand each game. The sponsorship cards are going to be different. The opportunities for advancing are going to be different. So sometimes your mech's going to be better at one thing, sometimes it's going to be better at another because of the way that your pilot is advancing. I love the way there's so many pilots and they all add just a little bit different. So I think it's great. I think it's easily a 3+ with a reroll as well.
Excellent. So there you have it. That is Giant Killer Robots.
That's not a robot.
Robots don't do that.
This edition is brought to you by all of our friends over at Patreon. These are the unsung heroes of the D6 generation. The men, the women, the children. I'm pretty sure there are a couple pets represented. The beings who have made the D6 generation possible for more than half, I believe, of its existence now. Without these folks, this show could not have lasted as long as it has. So today I would like to thank in particular Brennan Martin, Tom Mason, Tom's been around forever, John Maddock, Ian McCreary, and Jason McFarlane, all names I recognize. Thank you, boys. And thank everyone who has taken the opportunity to help us get as far as we've gone in this short amount of time, where short is some value longer than most people identify short. Did you ever notice how easy it is to miss what you don't know you don't know? Well, that's a pretty standard statement in the intelligence community, there's 3 basic categories: what you know you don't know, and what you don't know, which is obviously the worst kind of intelligence. So either there's the stuff that you know, or there's that ridge and you don't know what's on the other side of it, but you know there's something on the other side of it. So you send somebody over there and then you know what's on the other side of it, but you don't know whether that's all there is. So you know what you don't know. But then what you don't know is that's just a masking force, and there's a much larger force behind you that's about to hit you and destroy your entire unit. So the worst kind of intelligence is always the stuff you don't know. And I sort of had that pointed out to me at Adepticon over the last weekend, because there's this axiom, and longtime listeners will know that I often say, I mean, it's a paraphrase from a well-known hockey player, but I always say you lose 100% of the races that you don't run, is what I usually say, or you lose every race you don't run, as opposed to you miss every shot you don't take, but it still means the same thing, right? But there's a correlation that I have just recently realized that I've never kind of put together. And that's you also lose every race you don't finish. Because if you don't finish, there's not an opportunity for you to win, right? And so, as an example, I find it very easy to embrace the concept of you have to try to succeed. And I have mentioned that usually in the framework of talking about people who want to write. And I've told you about friends that I have that really want to be writers but won't write. Things like that. What I've been struggling with over the last year, 2017, as I've said, not the greatest year. Knock on wood, all the important things worked out. All of my loved ones have come out of various hospitals better than they went in, and everything seems to be okay, so that's good. Everything writing-wise seemed to stagger, and even things that were working weren't really working the way that they were supposed to work. And I got very concerned, and I got very frustrated, and I stopped pushing things that I should have continued pushing, and trying things that I should have kept trying, and I stopped writing with some very good reasons. I sort of put a lot aside over the last few months because my wife, Karen, is taking an extremely difficult financial industry test for a certification for her job so she can advance in her job, which she loves. So it's a dream come true, as this opportunity. And so I've sort of stepped up and taken on a lot of the slack that's happened because she's spending so much time on this test. And I couldn't have done that in written. So that's my justification, but it's also a good one, like most justifications. At least seems a good one to me. But what I didn't realize was also happening was I was pulling away from this whole dream of writing and novels and things like that. And it was only at Adepticon when I started right the week before Adepticon and then at Adepticon where I started reaching out and started trying to not mend, because there wasn't any damage, I don't think, but to reaffirm relationships that I have. Spent some time, not as much time as I would like, but I spent some nice quality time with Vincent and Brandon from Winged Hussar. I've been talking back and forth with the folks over at War Cradle. I have opened dialogue again with Fantasy Flight. And so basically I just rehung my shingle, let everybody know that I'm back in business. I've got, and it was great. I have immediate jobs that I'm working on right now. I'm writing again today, actually yesterday, but continued today for the first time in months. And I'm excited. I'm re-energized, which is good because I got a little nervous. I have plans with other people. I have some really exciting things, I think, in the works. Some really exciting announcements I'm not very far away from being able to make. So a lot happened, and it happened in a very short period of time because I got back into the race, I think. And that's the lesson that I learned, and it was hard because what I learned was I'm very good at trying. And I've tried almost anything I've ever thought maybe I'd like to do that. And I have a couple things more that I'm going to try over the course of the next few months that I'm going to be talking to you guys about. But what I didn't realize is that I had a limit, I guess, to my stamina, or at least I hit a wall, and it almost stopped me. And I then realized I can't, because I'm sure most people out there who have succeeded in their dreams have hit walls. And I mean, I've hit lots of little walls, but this was a big wall, and it was all of my own making. And so I guess my takeaway from this is that you can't let that happen. You've got to keep pushing through. When it gets tough, that's when you need to put the most effort into it, because you never can tell when something's going to drop for you. And so I guess that is the, if you can call it wisdom, the little gem of wisdom I would like to pass on here is, when things feel like they're wearing you down, you've got to sort of pull yourself up by the bootstraps and keep on going, because you never know how long you've got. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what kind of curveball life is going to throw you. So as long as you're moving, as long as you're trying, as long as you're jinking and juking and jiving, then you're going to be well balanced to deal with whatever's happening. You're going to be positioned so that you can take advantage of things that open up for you and rebound. I've got like 18 mixed sports metaphors going on here all at once. Rebound from difficulties that might suddenly arise in your path. And so I'm very happy to say that I am moving forward, and I've got a bunch of stuff that I have kind of either been offered or cobbled together or moved on. I've got some new things in the works. Long time listeners from the very beginning will know how I feel about Facebook. And that was before Facebook took all of the public relations hits it's taken over the last couple of weeks. And so, I got some surprising announcements to make, but when I'm ready, I'll make those. Until then, you continue working as well. You continue pushing forward. You continue striving. When you have a dream, don't let your own anxiety and your own exhaustion get in your way, right? That's when you push forward even harder. And I feel good, and I want you to feel good. And none of us are cheapened by the success of anybody else. So I want everybody to succeed in everything they want to do. And I want to help if I can. So that's all I've got to say about that for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Thank you for listening to us tonight, and have a great week. We'll be live next Wednesday. Yeah, next Wednesday for more.